story.
Hey everyone, Joe Cherry's back with another everything video. Now you've seen me do a lot of Mario and Pokemon on this channel, but it's time to do a new franchise. We're heading to Sonic the Hedgehog, and today we're looking at every single one of Sonic's enemies. Basic rules for this video are, we're only looking at the basic enemies, so no bosses. So no Dr. Robotnik or no Faker Shadow the Hedgehog.
I found you, Faker!
And also no named characters. And honestly, that's really it for the rules. We're looking at every enemy from any Sonic game that has existed ever. And one final thing before we begin, if you want to support me and this channel, you can head over to patreon.com and do so, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thanks to everybody for the support. Now, without further ado, every Sonic enemy. Alright, let's start off with Sonic 1 enemies, with Motobug. Motobug is the first enemy seen in the original Sonic the Hedgehog game, and is a very common enemy throughout the franchise. Robots made by Dr. Robotnik go by a very specific name. They are known as badniks. So going forward, instead of saying everything is a robot, I'm going to refer to them as badniks if they're badniks. This badnik moves very slow back and forth towards the player. They are extremely slow and can easily be defeated with any attack. Their size is ever changing throughout the Sonic games, being very small in Sonic the Hedgehog 8-bit for the Game Gear, and being extremely large, larger than Sonic himself in Sonic Frontiers. Buzz Bomber. Buzz Bombers are badnik bees that are seen in the original Sonic the Hedgehog as the second enemy. They fly from one side of the screen to the other and stop to retract their stinger and shoot projectiles at Sonic. While the Buzz Bomber's iconic move is shooting these projectiles, not all Buzz Bombers can actually shoot them. Some only fly around. These ones' only means of hurting Sonic is if they run directly into him. Much like the Motobug, Buzz Bomber is seen in a lot of different Sonic games. Chopper. Chopper is a badnik based on a piranha. They typically attack by jumping out of the water at Sonic when he goes over bridges. But like I said, most choppers hop out of water, not all of them. In Sonic Mania and Sonic Superstars, we see choppers that swim back and forth in large bodies of water, and when they see Sonic, will swim after him. Crab Meat. Crab Meat is the first of the many crab-based badniks. They are red crabs with eyes extending out of their body that move back and forth. When they see Sonic, they will stand still, charge up, and then shoot two projectiles out of their claws. While most variants do this attack, there are also variants that will stop and shoot homing missiles out of their claws instead. These are seen in games like Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. These variants of the Crab Meat also have a sense of humor, as if they hit the player with a homing missile, they will fall over laughing. Newton. Newtons are badniks based on chameleons. To start with, they will be completely invisible and then turn visible when Sonic gets near them. They come in two different colors and their attack pattern is determined by this color. The green Newton will turn visible, shoot a projectile, and then turn invisible again, while the blue Newton will drop to the ground and turn itself into a little missile flying at the player. As they both act differently, green and blue Newton I'm counting as different enemies. Caterpillar. Caterpillar is a spiky purple caterpillar badnik. Their movement is very similar to that of an inchworm crunching up their body in order to move. To defeat them, Sonic must jump on their heads. If Sonic hits any other part of their body, he will take damage, but the Caterpillar will break into the pieces and bounce away. Batbrain. Batbrains are bat badniks that hang from the ceiling and drop down to attack the player. This simple attack pattern is all they do in the original Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic Mania, but in Sonic Lost World and Sonic Superstars they are a bit different. In Sonic Lost World they will attack in large groups, and in Sonic Superstars they will fly from left to right without ever hanging on the ceiling. Roller. Roller is an armadillo badnik that is rarely seen. The Roller is an enemy only seen in the original Sonic the Hedgehog and has never returned, at least in this form. These little armadillos will roll themselves into a ball and can roll extremely fast, faster than Sonic actually. While in their ball form, they are completely indestructible, so the easiest way to handle them is simply to avoid them. But when they get to the bottom of hills, they will also unroll, making them vulnerable to attacks. Spikes. Spikes are the second badniks based on crabs. This one specifically based on a hermit crab. In their original appearance in Sonic the Hedgehog for the Genesis and Game Gear version, these are very simple enemies that walk back and forth, not attacking. Because of the spikes in their back, they cannot be jumped on, so you must use a spin dash in order to defeat them. These enemies return in Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2, but due to the fact that they are now completely covered in spikes, they cannot be spin dashed to beat them at all. The last appearance of this enemy is in Sonic Lost World, where they act completely different, hanging from ceilings and shooting spikes as projectiles to attack. Burrowbot. Burrowbots are badniks based on moles. They wait on the ground with their drill noses hanging out of the ground and pop out when Sonic gets near. Once out of the ground, they are fairly harmless, simply walking back and forth. However, they do have the ability to climb ledges rather fast, but due to the fact that they walk so slow, they will rarely ever catch up to Sonic. Jaws. Jaws are badniks based on sharks. They are a mostly harmless enemy that simply swim back and forth and do not attack at all, with the exception exception of Sonic Lost World, that is, where they gain the ability to charge after Sonic in order to attack. Unidasu. Unidasu are round badnik enemies that are based on urchins. They are also the very first of what is called an Orbinaut. Orbinauts are a group of robots that all act similarly. This one specifically has a round body with 4 spiked balls rotating around it. Whenever the Unidasi spot Sonic, they will throw their spiked balls rapidly at him. Once they have attacked with all their balls, they are completely open to attack. But if Sonic walks into their round body, he will be hurt. Uni Uni. Uni Uni is the second of the Orbinaut badniks. They are almost identical to the Unidasi, but instead of throwing their spike balls at Sonic, they will keep them floating around their body, making them extremely hard to kill without invincibility frames. Often the Uni Uni will float back and forth, blocking paths. In Sonic Superstar, for some reason, the Uni Uni acts exactly like the Unidasi and throw their spikes, making them functionally the same. Honestly, I'm not sure why these aren't Unidasi. Maybe it's the color? Bomb. So up to this point, all of Dr. Eggman's robots have been based on animals. But for this next one, he just ran out of ideas and simply made Bomb, which is a bomb badnik. As an enemy, bombs are completely indestructible and cannot be destroyed by Sonic in any way. When they explode, they will rain down 4 energy balls that will damage Sonic. Ballhog. Ballhogs are pig badnik enemies. They will hop up and down, pulling explosives out of their bellies that bounce forward at Sonic. The Ballhogs have been seen in 3 different games and always have the same behavior in every game. Moving on from Sonic 1 enemies, we have Sonic the Hedgehog 2 enemies, and leading them off is Buzzer. Buzzer is a wasp-based badnik and a variant of the Buzz Bomber. They first show up in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Buzzers have an extremely similar movement pattern to that of the Buzz Bomber, flying onto the screen and stopping to shoot projectiles. While most buzzers fly with a jetpack, some fly with propellers or even wings. Coconuts. Coconuts are monkey badniks that climb up and down palm trees. They attack by throwing coconuts at Sonic. They first appeared in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and last appeared in Sonic the Lost World. Masher. Mashers are extremely similar to choppers. They are badnik piranhas that jump out of water when Sonic runs over bridges. Seriously, these are literally just choppers with a different name, but they are considered a completely different enemy, so here we are. Grabber. Grabbers are spider badniks. They hang from the ceiling and will drop down attempting to grab Sonic. When they do, they will start blinking and will self-destruct after a short period of time. To escape, the player must rapidly press left and right before the grabber explodes. In Sonic Generations, there are also specific grabbers that will crawl along the ground. Spiny. Spinies are badniks that are said to be based on urchins, but I don't really see it. These robots move extremely slow along the ground or on the wall. When they see Sonic, they will open up their flaps and let out projectiles to attack. Chop Chop. Chop Chop is the third different robot fish based on a piranha. Dr. Eggman really wasn't feeling inspired in these early games, but don't worry, it gets worse with a different animal. You'll see. Unlike choppers or mashers though, these ones do not hop out of the water, but are rather seen in water levels where they swim back and forth. Though Chop Chops don't actually try to attack Sonic, due to water physics slowing down Sonic's movements, Chop Chops can be extremely hard to dodge. And yeah, I kept saying Chop Chop because I really just like saying the name. Grounder. Grounders are the successor to the Burrowbot. Unlike the Burrowbot though, they do not hide in the ground, but instead they can hide inside certain walls and jump out to attack. When on the ground, they move back and forth slowly, just like Burrowbots. But unlike Burrowbots, they cannot climb up ledges. Wisp. Wisp are small badniks based on flies. They are found in groups of either 3 or 5. They can easily be defeated by any attack, but will continue to chase Sonic until he goes in water. These little jerks are often placed in the most annoying spots, making them almost impossible to avoid. Seriously, as a kid in this exact spot, I got hit every single time. Crawl. Crawl is our third badnik based on a crab. Unlike other crab-based enemies, these ones have a shield. Their shield protects them from being attacked from above or from the front. In order to destroy a Crawl, Sonic must get behind him and then spin dash him. But this is a lot of effort for no reason, as if you just jump over them, you can easily ignore them. Gola. Gola is yet another Orbinaut badnik, but instead of having spikes that float around it, it has floating fire. Golas have been in many games, and in each game they pretty much have a different attack pattern. In Sonic the Hedgehog 2, they slowly move forward and throw 4 fireballs to attack. In Sonic Mania, Golas only have 2 fireballs and don't launch them at all. In Sonic Lost World, they look and act more like fire bars from the Mario franchise. Pretty much the only thing consistent about these little guys is that you have to attack their body in order to destroy them. Rexon. Rexons are badniks based on dinosaurs. They have a long neck that pops out from lava, and they shoot projectiles from their mouth at Sonic. Rexons have the inability to change which direction they are facing, so if Sonic gets behind them, they are completely harmless. If you jump on their head, you will destroy their head and neck, but not their body. As their bodies do not hurt Sonic, their bodies can be used as a platform. Spiker. Spikers are yet another badnik based on crabs. Yep, the 4th one. And you better get ready, because Eggman absolutely adores crabs. These round enemies walk on the ground or on the ceiling and have a spiked cone on their head. As the player walks by, they will either launch their cone upward or downward depending on where they are at the player. Quelton. Quelton are robotic centipedes that, despite their name, do very little crawling. Instead, they hide inside of walls with just their head show. As Sonic gets near, they will quickly extend their body out of the wall to hurt Sonic. Much like the Caterpillar from earlier, their weak spot is their head, and if Sonic touches the body instead of the head, he will be damaged. Flasher. Flashers are firefly-based badniks that are only seen in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. They fly around extremely slowly, but after a while will stop in place. Once they stop, they will create a light barrier that cannot be passed through and will damage the player. When the lights are blinking, Sonic must completely avoid these enemies as they are completely indestructible. But once the lights are off, flashers are susceptible to any attack. Aquas. Aquas is a robot based on a seahorse that has the ability to float in the air. In their original appearance in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, they will float around and shoot projectiles to attack. However, in Sonic the Lost World, they are a little bit different. They do not have the ability to shoot projectiles, but instead swoop down at Sonic and use a vacuum attack to suck up rings. Octus. Octus, as you would expect from their name, are octopus-based badniks. When Sonic is around, they will simply sit on the ground, but as Sonic approaches, they will spin their tentacles like propellers in order to float in the air and then shoot a projectile. Asteron. Asterons are starfish-based badniks. At each point of their star, they have a spike that they will self-destruct in order to send flying as projectiles. As these enemies hide inside of walls, they cannot be attacked by Sonic. In Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1, they will spin before exploding, making the trajectory of their spikes less predictable. In Sonic Mania, Asterons are simply projectiles for aero columns to shoot. Much like the arrows from Sonic the Hedgehog 2, they get stuck on the walls and can be used as platforms. They are also seen during the Heavy Shinobi boss fight, where the boss will use them as shurikens to attack. Honestly, it's pretty cool to see this enemy used in so many different ways. Shellcracker. Alright, now we're getting a little ridiculous with the crabs. Shellcracker is the 5th enemy based in the crab, and we're just in the 2nd Sonic game. Seriously, Eggman, get creative. The defining feature of the Shellcracker is their large claw, which they will extend outwards to attack Sonic. Slicer. Slicers are robots based on praying mantis. They can be found either clinging to the ground or the ceiling. They attack by throwing their claws at Sonic, which will home toward him. Depending on which game you are playing, it will determine what mantis will do after they throw their claws. Sometimes they'll do absolutely nothing, just sitting there harmless. Other times they'll regenerate new claws and throw them. Sometimes their claws they throw are boomerangs that come back to them so they can throw them again. And sometimes these guys just self-destruct. In every single game these guys are seen in, they act just a little bit different. Valkyrie. Valkyries are bird-based badniks. In many games they simply attack by flying from right to left, or dropping from the top of the screen to the bottom. In Sonic Forces they have a unique pattern where they fly overhead and drop bombs on Sonic. Nebula. Nebulas are robot enemies that slowly rise up and are mostly seen in flying levels. As Sonic gets near them, they will drop spiked balls, bombs, or mines. Once they drop their projectile, instead of ascending, they will slowly descend. Turtleoid. Turtleoids are turtle badniks that come in large and small and are usually seen together. The small ones are usually found on the back of the large ones. Much like Nebulas, they are mostly seen in flying levels. The large turtleoid attacks by firing a projectile from its mouth. The large ones are also completely indestructible and cannot be defeated. However, the small ones in their back can be destroyed. Once the small turtleoids are defeated, you can stand on top of the large turtleoid's back using it as a platform. Clucker. Cluckers are chicken-based badniks. They will hide inside of the ground until Sonic gets near, and then they will pop out. Cluckers will sit on a tiny turret and fire egg-shaped projectiles to attack. Shifting games, we have the new Motora found in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, but not the original one, the 8-bit version for the Game Gear. The new Motora is a variant of the Motora, or the Motobug as I referred to them earlier. The main difference between these and their original version is that these ones will charge to attack. Power Bomb. Alright, back to crab enemies it is. And honestly, this is almost identical to the crab meat, shooting projectiles out of their claws. However, they do have their own unique color combinations, making them look a lot cooler. Game Game. Game Game is a turtle badnik. To attack, these enemies float in the air and fly at Sonic like a frisbee with their spikes on their side. Zaurin. Zaurin are badniks based on crayfish, which isn't technically a crab, so give Dr. Obana credit. But god damn it, does he love crustaceans. Zaurin will swim back and forth in water, and as Sonic approaches, they will charge at him. Zaurin also have the unique ability to pop air bubbles that Sonic usually would use for air. Burrowbot. Now you might be thinking, didn't we already talk about Burrowbot? Well, yes. Burrowbot spelled like this, but this Burrowbot is spelled like this with a W. So obviously they're different enemies. Much like the Burrowbot will jump out of the ground to attack. One of the main differences between this and the original Burrowbot is that this Burrowbot will not walk off ledges. Buttons are pig badniks that act extremely similar to the ball hawk, but instead of attacking with bomb balls, they simply jump. Their attack pattern is to jump in place, see Sonic, jump at him 3 times, and then jump in place again. But if Sonic's still in range of that, guess what? Re-jumps again. Watch out for these guys. Flying Chopper. Flying Choppers are a variation of the standard chopper, but instead of jumping out of water from below bridges, they simply float in the air and move back and forth. Mecha Hayoko. Mecha Hayoko are robots based on chicks. They are very basic and simple enemies hopping around on the ground to attack. As enemies, they are only ever seen in 3 different games: Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the 8-bit version, Sonic Chaos, and Sonic the Hedgehog Hedgehog Triple Trouble. All three are Sonic titles for the Game Gear. The next group of enemies we have are all from the obscure arcade game Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, which isn't anything like the original Sonic the Hedgehog, but is its own original arcade game. Our first enemy is the Antlion. The Antlion's appearance is mostly unknown, as the only part of them that can be seen is their pinchers that stick out of sand. They're only seen inside the middle of sand funnels. Centipede Badnik. Continuing with this strange game, we have Centipede Badnik. This is an enemy that will follow Sonic throughout the level, but it cannot be destroyed, and if Sonic makes contact with it, it will deal damage. And last but not least for this strange game, we have Sea Snake Badnik. These are large serpentine robots that extend from stone archways with their bodies. Though they can't be defeated by traditional means, if Sonic destroys the archways that they come out of, he will in turn destroy the sea snake. Up next, we have enemies from the often forgotten game Sonic CD. An important note about this game is that the main mechanic of the game is time travel, so most enemies will have present versions and bad future versions that are basically just worn out versions of themselves. First up is Anton. Antons are badniks based on ants, and they first appeared in Sonic CD. They have an ant body and one wheel that allows them to patrol back and forth on platforms. They are seen in 3 total games: Sonic CD, Sonic Lost World, and Sonic Superstars. In Sonic CD and Sonic Superstars, they will simply move around and make no effort to attack, but in Sonic Lost World, they will attempt to pick them up and then explode. In Sonic Superstars, they will also infinitely spawn out of holes, so it's best to just avoid them. Needle Nose. Needle Nose are badniks based on mosquitoes. They will fly in a straight line until Sonic goes under them. When they do, they will dive bomb straight down as an attack. If a Needle Nose misses an attack, it will get stuck in the ground and can easily be defeated. Continuing with enemies from Sonic CD, another important note about these enemies is that they don't have English names. They all just have Japanese names, which is definitely true for Patabata, who are small butterfly badniks. These little guys will fly back and forth in zigzagging patterns and don't make any attempt to attack Sonic. After that, we have Taga Taga. Taga Tagas are robots based on giant water bugs. Much like the Patabata and most enemies after this, they are only seen in Sonic CD. Some of the Taga Tagas are seen jumping out of water from under bridges, sort of like choppers or mashers from before. Others are found later in the game in the water levels. Here they will swim back and forth until Sonic gets near. As Sonic approaches, they will shoot 3 spikes, one to the left, one up the middle, and one to the right. After doing this, they quickly flee. Tamabo. Tamabo are badniks based on stink bugs. These little guys move back and forth until they see Sonic firing arcing projectiles from both of their cannons. This is very similar to how the crab meat attacks. Ga. Ga are badniks based on moths that move in a very similar pattern to the Patabata. Their main difference is while moving, they will leave a trail of sparkling dust behind them. However, the dust has no effect on the player at all, making them virtually the same as the Patabata. Kamakama. Kamakamas are sadly not chameleons, but rather robots based on praying mantis. The Kamakama have a very similar attack pattern to that of the Slicer, throwing their arms at Sonic to attack. However, unlike Slicers, once these guys throw their arms, they will then start rolling towards Sonic to attack. Tentao. Tentao are ladybug badnik. However, unlike the Motobug or new Motora, these little guys hover above the ground instead of moving on it. They also have the ability to drop bombs on Sonic when he gets near. Amembo. Amembo is a water strider robot. Much like real water striders, they move on top of water. When Sonic gets near him, they can also fire a projectile to attack. Tombo. Tombos are dragonfly badniks. These robots don't have any real attacks, but rather simply move in predetermined patterns, like up and down or left and right. As their patterns are extremely predictable, you can easily defeat them. Yago. Yago are robots based on crayfish, making them the 2nd crayfish robot and the 8th crustacean robot so far. And we're only on robot number 61. Yagos will swim on the floor in water areas. When they see Sonic, they will try and quickly lunge at him in order to attack. Kamushi. These are spiked caterpillar badniks, very similar to the Caterkiller. However, like the Caterkiller, they are only weak in the head. Como Como. Como Como are spider badniks. These enemies will stand in one place and not move, and instead just jump up and down. They will attack by firing a web projectile that sticks to the ground, and if Sonic steps on the web, he will get stuck for a few seconds. Noru Noru. Noru Noru are snail robots that crawl slowly on the ground. Once Sonic gets near, they will extend spikes from their shell to protect themselves from being jumped on. Sasori. Sasori are scorpion badniks that roll along the ground back and forth. Once they see Sonic, they will fire a projectile from their tail to attack. Batapayan. These are grasshopper badniks that move by hopping up and down. While they do hop up and down in place, they will hop after Sonic once they see him. Minomushi. Minomushi are robot bagworm enemies. They will hide on the ceiling or the bottom of platforms with only their tiny little red butts hanging out. When Sonic gets near, they will drop down and extend their spikes out to hurt him. Poby. Poby, along with the rest of the enemies from Sonic CD we're about to go over, are all also seen in Sonic Mania, as the levels that they are in that game. Pobies are bee robots that come in 2 different forms. The first ones fly back and forth and stop to fire projectiles like buzz bombers. The others fly back and forth and have a mace hanging from their tail that will hurt Sonic if it hits them. While some of them only have 1 mace hanging, others have 2 maces hanging from them. Semi. Semis are cicada robots that are found in small swarms and will fly towards Sonic when they attack. They also have the ability to drop spiked bombs that that will explode into debris and hurt Sonic. Dango. Dangos are pill bug-like badniks. When Sonic isn't near them, they will simply walk back and forth. But as Sonic approaches, they will curl into a ball and roll at him to attack. While in their ball state, they are invulnerable to damage. But if Sonic spin dashes into them while they're in their ball form, he will knock them back. Hotaru. Hotarus are Firefly robots that attack by shooting down an electrical beam. In Sonic CD, when these little guys attack, they will fly away after doing so. But these little guys are also in Sonic Superstars, where they have the ability to do multiple attacks. These enemies are also seen during the Haitaru High-Watt mini boss fight. This boss fight is from Sonic Mania, and the Haratus in this fight have a different attack pattern. These versions of the enemy will create chains of lightning that connect them together. Then they will move downward to attack Sonic. Cavacira. Cavaciro are Mosquito Badnik. They will simply fly up and down, but when they see Sonic, they will launch an image of themselves as an attack. Sonic can defeat the image with a simple attack, but if he does not defeat it, it will explode. Kanabun. Kanabans are robot beetles that will fly around roads. They do this by going from the background to the foreground. While in the background, they cannot be interacted with at all. Big Bomb. Big Bomb, just like the name suggests, are a bigger version of the bomb enemy. Much like the smaller bombs, they cannot be defeated by Sonic in any way. The big difference between these and the regular sized bomb is that regular bombs will stand still and explode, while big bombs will chase after Sonic in order to get close to him when they explode. Mechaboo. Mechaboos are Badnik Rhino beetles. In Sonic CD and Sonic Mania, Mechaboos will lower their saw on their head in order to attack Sonic, but they do not have the ability to turn around, so they can be easily killed. In Sonic Superstars, these guys are given a new attack, which is the ability to throw their buzzsaws at Sonic. On top of that, they've also gained the ability to turn around, making these guys much more difficult to defeat. Scarab. Scarabs are beetle badniks that will move back and forth and don't really attack. If Sonic happens to run into a Scarab, they will force him to spin dash in the opposite direction. Because this can be used as a way to gain instantaneous speed, it can be used to the advantage of the player. Rarely in Sonic CD, some of the Scarabs can be seen carrying ring monitors in their limbs. In Sonic Mania, where these guys reappear, all of the Scarab enemies carry either monitors or spikes. Alright, we're now off of Sonic CD enemies and on to Sonic Chaos enemies, with the first one being the Boingo Bot, who is yet another beetle-based badnik. These little guys have springs in their back that can be used like any other spring in the game. While they can't be defeated by jump simply because of the springs on their back, they can be defeated by spin dash. An interesting fact about these little guys is that their Japanese name actually links them to the Moto Bug, meaning they're most likely intended to be a variation of the Moto Bug. Metalo Turtle. Despite its name, Metalo Turtle is not a turtle at all, but instead a rhinoceros beetle. Honestly, extremely poor naming conventions from Dr. Eggman. These little guys simply walk back and forth and do not attack. Though they do appear to have horns that would hurt Sonic, Sonic can simply jump directly on them and not be hurt, making their horns completely useless. Between the name and the useless horns, this has to be one of the worst designed badniks of all time. Frogger. Frogger is a frog-based badnik that has absolutely no relation to the classic arcade game Frogger, though it would be cooler if he did. Froggers were simply hop forward non-stop, not reacting to Sonic at all and continuing to simply jump forward. Vegobot. For some reason, Dr. Eggman really liked the O-Bot names in Sonic Chaos, so we have our third O-Bot enemy, Vegobot. And as you would suspect, Vegobot is a vegetable-based badnik. Now, which vegetable he is, you may ask, I have no clue. The Sonic Wiki says it looks like a rutabaga, but I'm not sure about that. Here's what a rutabaga looks like, and here's the enemy. Does that look like a rutabaga? In my humble opinion, it looks nothing like a rutabaga. As an enemy, it will simply move back and forth and sometimes do little hops. However, its hops are completely random and not based on Sonic's position, so it'll most likely not hop into Sonic. Next, we have the Coconut Bots, who are coconut robots that hang in trees like normal coconuts. When Sonic gets near, they will start flashing, but they don't do any damage, so you could argue these aren't even really enemies as they're just kind of robots that are in the background. But the manual takes time to mention that these guys are robots and enemies, so I'm counting them. Bomblin. Bomblins are self-destructing bomb robots. They act very similar to the bomb, but they blow up when Sonic gets close rather than being on a timer. Moving from our traditional Sonic games, we go to Sonic Spinball, which is a Sonic pinball game. It honestly has a pretty clever name being called Spinball. The first robot is the Cluckbird. Cluckbirds will spawn infinitely from hatches in the wall and fly around getting in Sonic's way. As annoying as they can be, they are defeated in a single hit. Continuing with Spinball, we have the Magma Worm. This is yet another enemy that will pop out of the wall in order to get in Sonic's way. However, unlike the Cluckbird, they take 3 hits to defeat. Next, we have the Rexon. Not the Rexon with 1 X, which we talked about earlier. No. This is the Rexon with 2 X's. Again, poor naming conventions from Dr. Robotnik. This is a giant Leviathan badnik only seen in Sonic Spinball. He's at the bottom of the Toxic Caves level and will try and eat Sonic if he falls down there. Furon. Furons are badniks of some kind, but what they're truly meant to look like, I'm really unsure. They will black pass and fly around the stage much like the Cluckbirds. They come in these 2 different colors, but both of them act exactly the same. Buster. Busters are another badnik that are kind of ambiguous as to what they are based on. The Sonic wiki says that they are listed as a feline, but I don't really see that. Much like a lot of the enemies in this game, busters are seen flying around and blocking paths. If Sonic hits them, they will completely halt his momentum and send him flying backwards, but one hit will destroy them. Crondor. Crondor is a badnik based on a condor, though he is also known as Vulture to some, which is a bit confusing because those are two different birds. Like many enemies in Sonic Spinball, they will be in the way blocking paths. When specific Crondors are defeated, they will open up paths for Sonic to take. Scratch. Scratch is a chicken robot minion of Dr. Robotnik. He is seen in The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the TV show. Though in the show he is one specific robot, in Sonic Spinball we see mass-produced versions of him, though he is specifically only seen in the third bonus game. On to another very strange Sonic game, we have Sega Sonic Cosmos Fighter. This is a mini arcade game combined with a sort of ride. It features only one level that sees you chasing Dr. Eggman in space with Sonic in his own ship. The gameplay is similar to that of an old school shoot 'em up and features 3 different enemies that Eggman releases to try and hurt Sonic. We have the black spheres, the red spaceships, and the yellow diamonds. All 3 are easily defeated by shooting them with Sonic's spaceship. Following that obscure game, we're on to a more mainstream one, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, where we find Bluminator. Bluminators are flower-shaped robots. As they are flowers, they simply sit in place and don't really do much, but they will fire projectiles in order to attack. Sonic 3 also gave us the Caterkiller Jr. This is the flying variation of the Caterkiller that flies back and forth in the air rather than being on the ground. They also have the ability to release electrical waves that will hurt the player. Like the standard Caterkiller, they can only be destroyed by jumping on their head, as it's the only part of the body that won't hurt Sonic. Monkey Dude. Monkey Dude's perhaps the greatest named Sonic enemy of all time, are monkey robots that act very similar to coconuts. They climb up and down trees and throw coconuts to attack exactly like coconuts do. However, these guys can only throw one coconut and then they can no longer attack because, well, they'll be out of coconuts. But if you leave the area and return, they will magically have found a brand new coconut. Also, those definitely are coconuts. I know that they're listed as coconuts, but they're definitely footballs. Rhinobot. Rhinobots are badniks that quickly move back and forth. As they do so, they will stop quickly and do sick Tokyo drifts around the corner. Though the Rhinobot appears to have a horn on the front, you can dash attack directly into it and not take damage, making it completely useless. Blastoid. Blastoid, not to be confused with Blastoise, the Pokemon, are bunker-based robots, but maybe I just have Blastoise in the brain because these things look a lot like turtles to me. They sit in the water and always fire their bullets at 40-degree angles. As they cannot aim, they are extremely easy to avoid and easy to defeat. Buggernauts. Buggernauts are horsefly badniks. They come in 2 sizes, large and small. They attack by flying at Sonic. As they come in both big and small, they are found in groups with a large leader. At first, the large leader is the only one vulnerable to attacks. Once you kill the large leader, you can then kill the small ones as well. Jaws. Jaws with a Z, not to be confused with Jaws with an X, who was featured earlier in the video, is a different shark-based robot. Jaws are first found in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. In this game, they can be found in and out of water and fly in straight lines either way. This kind of behavior is exactly how they act in Sonic Mania as well, but in Sonic Colors, they have a completely different attack pattern. In this game, they will swim around the water doing nothing until they see Sonic. Then they will launch themselves in a straight line at Sonic, rather than just traveling in a straight line as before. Also in Sonic Colors, there's a smaller variation of the Jaws, known as Smaller Jaws, I guess I'll call them that. These little guys will swim around and follow Sonic in the water. Mega Chopper. Mega Choppers are a variation of the Chopper. However, unlike the normal Chopper, they don't actually hurt Sonic, but while they are latched onto him, Sonic cannot spin jump or dash. On top of these movement restrictions, they will also start slowly draining Sonic's rings until they are all gone, which will result in Sonic's death. To get a Mega Chopper off of Sonic, you must rapidly press left and right. Poindexter. Poindexter is a pufferfish badnik whose name is a play on the term Poindexter, which is an old school insult for nerds. These little guys will simply swim around in water, periodically extending their spikes and withdrawing them. When the spikes are redacted, they can easily be defeated by any attack. However, they are invulnerable when they have the spikes out. Turbo Spiker. It's been a little bit since we had a new crab enemy, but here we are. We're back to crab enemies. This is the Turbo Spiker, and he is based on the Hermit Crab, making him now the 7th crab enemy. Like the standard Spiker from Sonic the Hedgehog 2, when these guys see Sonic, they will launch their spike into the air. However, unlike the standard Spiker, these guys cannot hang from ceilings, but in exchange, they get the ability to move much faster. Bubbles. Bubbles are robot pufferfish that first appeared in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. These little enemies will simply float in the air, and when they see Sonic, they will float towards him. Much like the Poindexter from earlier, they will extend and withdraw their spikes. When these enemies show up in future games, they act differently based on their color. Blue ones would just float around without spikes at all, while the red ones would have retractable spikes. Mantis. Mantis as a name is a misnomer, as these enemies aren't mantis at all, but rather robot grasshoppers. These little robots can either hide in the ground or stand around waiting for Sonic. Once Sonic gets near, they will start jumping continuously. These enemies return in Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2, where they can hide on the ceiling and try and drop on Sonic's head. Strange Relief. Strange Relief is one of the most peculiar names for a robot enemy I have ever heard. These are stoneheads that are mounted on walls found in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. These stoneheads simply sit on the wall and shoot arrows from their mouth to attack. They are defeated by hitting the red gem of their head 3 times. Strange Reliefs are usually found at dead ends and must be defeated in order to advance in the level. Spiker. Alright, I know we already had an enemy named Spiker, and again, Dr. Robotnik, you really need to work on your naming conventions because this is different. This is a completely different enemy than the Spiker from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It's also completely different than the Turbo Spiker from this game. These enemies will hide their facing cannons underground and at first glance look like normal spikes. However, if Sonic jumps on the spikes, they will not hurt him, but instead act like a spring, allowing him to jump higher. This has always been the most confusing thing ever. Dr. Robotnik made this robot, okay? He put spikes on its back. Okay, cool, great idea. Sonic can't jump on it. But instead of making the spikes do damage, Dr. Robotnik just says, no, I'm gonna make it bouncy so Sonic can bounce off him and it won't even hurt him at all like the normal spikes. Honestly, I do not understand Dr. Robotnik. Whenever Sonic gets close to the spikers, they will pop out of the ground and lob projectiles in his direction to try and hurt him. See, it's not like these enemies can't hurt Sonic, they can. It's just their spikes are useless. Batbot. Batbot is the second badnik based on her bat, the first being Batbrain. These robots have appeared in several games and in most appearances will follow Sonic flying around in circular patterns to chase him. However, in Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1, they will instead fly in a straight line at Sonic rather than doing the circles. Clamor. Clamor, as their name implies, are clam-based badniks. They sit completely still and shoot spike balls in straight lines in order to attack. If Sonic tries to destroy a Clamor by jumping on it, it will act like a spring, propelling him diagonally. Sparkle. Sparkles are grenade-esque robots that hang from the ceiling or sit on the floor. They will charge for about 3 seconds and then move quickly from the ceiling to the floor and vice versa, leaving a trail of electricity in their path. Because their charge times are so long, they are easily maneuvered past by just running by. Penguinator. Penguinators are badnik penguins that waddle around and will try and slide on their belly to attack. Whether they are waddling around or sliding on their bellies, they are easily defeated by any attack from Sonic. Star Pointer. Star Pointers are a variation of the Unidasi and an Orbinaut type enemy, but instead of having normal balls, they have ice balls. Their attack pattern is actually identical to that of the Unidasi, throwing their spike balls one at a time at Sonic. Corky. Corkies are badniks based on corks. They can be found in 2 different types of locations. One is on tracks where they can slide around, and the other is stuck to the ceiling where they'll be stuck stationary. The ones on tracks will try to get above Sonic so that they can fire a laser downwards at him. After firing the laser, they are stuck in place, making them easy to defeat. Flybot 767. Flybot 767s are badniks based on seagulls. They attack by flying overhead and trying to dive bomb at Sonic. While some flybots are found alone throughout levels, many will be summoned by an alarm seen at the launch base zone in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. When this alarm is set off, they will spawn infinitely. Orbinaut. While Orbinaut is a generic term for the Uni, Unidasi, and Star Pointer type enemies, there is also an enemy simply known as Orbinaut as well. Again, get it together, Dr. Robotnik. Why is your naming so terrible? The Orbinaut in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is very similar to the Uni. They will never throw their spike balls, instead keeping them around them for defensive purposes. Ribot. Alright, Dr. Robotnik actually got creative with the name here and named this frog robot Ribot. The robots come in 2 different variations, ones with 1 weight and ones with 2 weights. The robots with 1 weight will swing the weight above their head. When they have 2 weights, they can do 2 different attacks, either pound the ground with the weights or they can spin them around their body. If Sonic touches the weights at any point, it will deal damage to him, so you must attack the frog's body to defeat it. Snail Blaster. Snail Blasters are snail badniks that stick to walls and ceilings. When Sonic gets near them, they will open their shells and shoot projectiles to attack. Depending on which game you find them in, they will either be seen shooting glowing projectiles or spiked balls. Moving on to the Sonic 3 expansion, Sonic and Knuckles, we have Butter Droid. Butter Droid are badniks that are very similar to the Pata Bata from Sonic CD. However, instead of flying alone, these little guys are found in groups of 5. Their only attack is to fly in spirals towards Sonic. Cluckoid. Cluckoids are robot chickens that look like weather vanes. When Sonic gets near them, they will inhale and blow a strong gust of wind that pushes Sonic backward. While they can push Sonic into obstacles, they themselves cannot hurt Sonic. Dragonfly. Dragonflies are badnik robots that have spiked tails. Like a lot of spiked enemies like the Caterkiller, they can only be defeated by hitting their head. Their attack patterns are simply fly up and down. Mad Mole. Mad Moles are mole badniks that pop out of the ground and throw bouncy mushrooms at Sonic. While the bouncy mushrooms themselves cannot deal damage, they will knock Sonic back, often into things like spikes. When the Mad Mole returns in Sonic Mania, it serves a completely different role. Instead of throwing mushrooms, they will sit in their own pods and activate electrical currents that will run through wires to shock Sonic. Mush Meanie. Mush Meanie is a robot mushroom that attacks by hopping at Sonic. The Mush Meanies take 2 hits to the feet, with the first one knocking off their mushroom cap and the second one actually killing them. They come in 2 separate colors, orange and blue. Blaster. Blasters are Rhino Beetle badniks that fire projectiles at Sonic when he gets near. Depending on which game you're playing, depends on what kind of projectile they will shoot. In Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic Mania, they will fire sparkling generic projectiles. In Sonic Superstars, they will fire a projectile that lands on the ground and starts the ground on fire. And the weirdest one has to be from Sonic Lost World, where they will fire honey at the screen, making it harder for the player to see. This means of all Sonic enemies, this is the first one we have on this list that breaks the 4th wall. Techno Squeak. Techno Squeak is a mouse badnik that moves quickly, but does not try to attack Sonic. They can be found on both walls and ceilings. Hyrodoro. Hyrodoro are ghost enemies that are extremely sensitive to light. They're also the first enemy on this list that is not a robot of any kind. In fact, they don't even work for Eggman, they're just kind of their own thing. The way they work is when the lights are the brightest, these ghosts cannot be seen. But in the levels they are found in, it will slowly get darker and darker, and as it does, the ghost will grow bigger and bigger. On top of getting bigger, these ghosts will also increase in numbers as it gets darker. As they get bigger and increase in numbers, they are harder and harder to avoid, so you will have to turn back on the lights in order to not get hurt. Rockin'. Rockin' are robots that disguise themselves as rocks. They look exactly like other rocks that can be found in the level. Though these little guys can't hurt Sonic themselves, they will attempt to push him backward toward things like crushing pillars. Sandworm. Sandworm are worm badniks that have been seen in many Sonic games and have many different attack patterns depending on the game you find them in. The first appearance is in Sonic and Knuckles, where they will jump out of the sand in an arcing pattern. Next, they completely switch it up. In Sonic Colors, they pop out of hatches and fire energy projectiles. The projectile firing variation of the Sandworm appears in Sonic Forces, albeit with a much different design. And also, instead of shooting projectiles, they will shoot fire. In Sonic Lost World, these enemies are extremely large and move more like caterpillars, simply crawling on the ground. Scorp. Scorps are scorpion-based badniks that crawl on the ground and attack by swinging their mace-like tail at Sonic. Scorps can be extremely difficult to defeat as they swing their tails frequently. However, in Sonic Superstars, their tails aren't always active, so sometimes you can just jump right through the spike on their tail. Fireworm. Fireworms are worm robots that hide inside of the wall and will pop out when Sonic gets near. When they do, they will start floating back and forth, releasing fire from their back. Though these enemies do appear to have spikes in their head, that is actually the only part of their body that can be attacked for Sonic to defeat them. Iwamodaki. Iwamodaki is yet another robot based on a crab, and if you're keeping track at home, that's 8. These crabs will hide under rocks until the player gets near. Once Sonic approaches, they will open their eyes and charge their self-destruct attack. Once fully charged, they will explode into 4 rocks that will hurt Sonic. Iwamodaki are completely immune to all of Sonic's attacks, so it's best to just run past them before they explode. Toxomister. Toxomister are metal pipe robots that have eyes coming out of the top. They attack by releasing a pink mist that will stick to Sonic. The effect it has is identical to the Mega Chopper, slowly draining Sonic's rings. Also like the Mega Chopper, they can be gotten off by pushing left and right, or you can simply use a spin dash to outrun it. Egg Robo. Egg Robos are Eggman-looking badniks. They carry guns and attack by shooting projectiles from them. Some Egg Robos also have the ability to open up their head and launch a targeting missile. Spike Bonker. While most enemies from Sonic and Knuckles are seen in other games, Spike Bonkers are an exception. They are only seen in the Death Egg Zone. They float around and attack by throwing spike balls at Sonic. The balls they throw will return to them like a boomerang, and they will throw them again. Chain Spike. Chain Spike is yet another enemy only found in Sonic and Knuckles. These little guys will hover in the air and rapidly zip to the other side of the section when Sonic gets close. However, they have a short charge period, meaning if Sonic is moving fast enough, they will never hit him. Up next, we have enemies from the Game Gear exclusive game Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble. And the first one is Bomberberry. Bomberberries are badniks with propellers that carry bombs. As Sonic gets near, they will attempt to drop the bombs on Sonic's head. Spring Shell. Spring Shells are badnik robots that have a spring on their back and are nearly identical to the Boingo Bot from Sonic Chaos. Ladybuggy. Ladybuggies are robot ladybugs that are only seen in spin coasters, which are basically just minecarts. Once Sonic defeats the Ladybuggy, he can then jump in the spin coaster to ride it himself. Rabibbin. Rabibbin are badnik robots that will hop to attack. After a few hops in a single direction, they will turn around and hop in the opposite direction. Usually they are found on top of logs and will jump off of these into Sonic's path. Rydle Tap. Rydle Taps are robots that ride on small elevators. The platforms they ride on will move up and down, but will stop as Rydle Tap charges their attack. As they finish charging, they will shoot a projectile, at which time the platform will start moving again. If Sonic defeats the Rydle Tap, he can then ride on the platform it was on. Penguin Bomber. Penguin Bomber are exactly what their name implies. Explosive penguin badniks. They will quickly charge at Sonic, trying to explode and hurt him. However, they can easily be defeated by any attack. Spidle Tap. Spidle Taps are spider robots that, much like Rydle Tap, sit on moving platforms. However, unlike the Rydle Tap, they will simply sit there and have no means of attack. Elliot. Elliot are electric eel badniks that swim in wave patterns. They have electricity flowing through their bodies, so you must attack their head in order to defeat them. With the heads being the only way to defeat them and their bodies causing damage, they're basically just underwater caterpillars. Bombler. Bomblers are badniks that, despite their name, are not bombs at all. They are enemies found between two springs that will bounce back and forth. They are tough to hit due to how fast they move, but they can be defeated by any attack. Moving on from the Game Gear game Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble, we now move to enemies from Knuckles Chaotix. And first we have Lifter. Lifters are robots that are simply platforms. If you stand on top of them, they can be rode like normal platforms, but if you hit them from below, you can destroy them like normal robots. Ambush. Ambush are robot bushes that will float in the air, which honestly makes no sense because bushes don't usually fly. But do your thing, Dr. Eggman. They have spikes that will extend out and withdraw as they float around. These enemies act extremely similar to the bubbles from Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Burboom. Burbooms are badniks based on poppy flowers that will float through the air in a figure-8 pattern. They are indestructible and cannot be defeated by the player, so they should simply be ignored. If Knuckles gets below the Burbloom, it will grab onto him and then explode to hurt him. Bush Bubble. Bush Bubbles are badniks that seem to be a combination of a plant and a light bulb. They walk slowly on the ground and don't try to attack at all. However, in the Bionic Base Zone, there are actually two Bush Bubbles that actually can attack. They are charged up with electricity and are completely indestructible. They can only be found at night and move much faster. Caterlurcher. Caterlurchers are caterpillar-based robots that are variants of the Caterkiller from earlier. They even share the same color scheme as the Caterkiller. They move just like the Caterkiller by inching along the ground with their bodies. However, they do not have spikes, so they can be jumped on anywhere to be defeated. Spike Tower. Spike Towers are purple badniks that launch harpoons upwards that stick into the ceiling. Once they stick their harpoons into the ceiling, they will pull themselves up and then swing back and forth. Dribbler. Dribblers are floating badniks with arms that will hover and bounce a ball as they do. The ball will not hurt Knuckles, but it will knock him backwards like a bumper. While the ball can't be defeated, the dribblers can be with any attack. Gotcha. Gotchas are pink octopus badniks that will try to grab onto the player. If they do grab onto the player, they will turn them into a ball and start to drain their rings. While captured, the player can still jump, which can destroy the gotcha. Hover Bee Mach 2. Hover Bee Mach 2 is a very confusing enemy because there's no Hover Bee Mach 1 or even just a Hover Bee. These are robot butterflies whose Japanese name is Patabata, which implies they're the upgraded version of the Patabata from Sonic Chaos. Or maybe Dr. Robotnik never released the actual Hover Bee because it was a total failure of a project and just went straight to the Mach 2. Beetle. Beetles are badniks based on beetles that carry around giant clubs and swing them back and forth to attack. While these enemies can be defeated with a spin attack, they cannot be defeated with a jump attack, as you will get hit by the club if you try. Motor Spike. Motor Spikes are strange looking robots that will simply float back and forth and have no means of attack. However, they do have defensive spikes that will prevent them from being easily destroyed. Tick Tock. Tick Tock is a clock robot that will float in the air in a small area, swinging their spike pendulum as they do. The spike ball will always cause damage, so you need to attack their body in order to destroy them. Triclod. Triclod is a badnik based on a camera, whose name is a play on the word tripod. Like a lot of other enemies in Knuckles Chaos, they can't really attack at all, but just simply walk back and forth. Blitz. Blitz is a robot turret whose name implies it can move very fast, but despite its name, it's actually completely stationary. When Knuckles gets near, there will fire 6 homing missiles that will go after Knuckles. In order to evade these missiles, you can either get out of the range of the Blitz or destroy the Blitz, which will also destroy the missile. Bomb Bearer. Bomb Bearers are badnik scarabs that carry gray containers. However, they will simply fly overhead and not try to drop their containers to attack. The only way they will drop their containers is if they're defeated, and inside the containers are 2 bombs that can hurt Knuckles. Honestly, these guys are pretty useless and can just be avoided most of the time. Gutbuster. Gutbuster is a badnik based on a pressure cooker. I will say in Knuckles Chaotix, Dr. Robotnik has gotten much more creative with both his names and the ideas for his robot. A pressure cooker named Gutbuster? That's clever. These little guys will move around in a small area and stop to spit bombs into the air. They will then catch the bombs as they come back down. Ringleader. Ringleaders are blue badniks with propeller legs that float around. As a way of attack, they will detach the legs and send it flying like a boomerang. Trundle. Trundles are extremely fast-moving badniks. As Knuckles passes by a trundle, it will reveal its engine quickly and then continue moving around fast. Flotsam. Flotsams are pink manta ray badniks. These little guys will simply hover back and forth in set areas and not try to attack. Unnamed fish badnik. Obviously, this is not an official name, but these little guys have no names at all. This is a jet-powered fish badnik that simply moves in straight lines. Unnamed submarine badnik. Alright, this is the second unnamed enemy from Knuckles Chaotix. These are little submarine robots that will hide in the ground with only their periscope showing. When Knuckles gets near, they will pop themselves out of the ground and then quickly charge to attack. After doing so, they will then go back underground to their hiding spot. Piranha. Piranhas are yellow badniks that are based on, you guessed it, piranha plants. No, just piranhas, I'm joking. They will float in the air back and forth until the player gets near, then they will spit out a mine that will plant itself on the ground. While flying through the air or on the ground, it can hurt Knuckles. Pop Tank. Pop Tank is the 9th robot enemy that we have based on a crab. This one specifically based on a hermit crab. These little guys can be found on both the ground and ceiling and simply move back and forth. Moving on from a Knuckles game to a Tails game, we have Tails Sky Patrol. This is a strange game where Tails flies around and uses a ring to attack. The very first enemy in the game is Balloon Gun, which are floating cannons being held up by a balloon. They can be defeated by popping the balloon, making the cannons fall to the ground. Next, we have Bee-Fly. Bee-Flies are robots that fly in an extremely similar pattern to that of the Wisp from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. They fly around in a seemingly random pattern and can be defeated by the boomerang ring. Dorigom. Dorigom are robot turtles that look extremely similar to the Turtleoid, but their behavior is quite a bit different. These little guys walk around on the ground and attack by throwing bombs at Tails. Tobokoshi Crow. Tobokoshi Crows are blue bird enemies that fly around the stage and dive bomb to attack Tails. In later levels in the game, they also can have cannons that fire projectiles to attack. Boundhead. Boundhead are glowing orb robots that simply bounce up and down on the ground. Capture Berry. Capture Berries are robots that will try to capture Tails' ring. As they will simply take the ring and not be destroyed by it, they must be completely avoided. Gon. Gons are yellow robot dinosaurs. These little guys will jump in the air and try to grab Tails' ring. If they succeed, it will slow down Tails greatly and make it harder for him to fly. Hanarutan. Hanarutans are skeletons with no legs. And no, they're not robots, they're just simply skeletons. These little skeletons will hop on the ground and try to explode in order to hurt Tails. Minokichi. Minokichi are robot bagworms that hang from the ceiling by a string. They move around by climbing up and down on that string. Carronade. Carronade are black cannon robots that remain stationary and simply shoot cannonballs at Tails. Now, one might think that these things aren't robots at all, but rather just cannons. But how else would they fire automatically? They must be robots. Honestly, I can see the argument for this not being an enemy and being more of an obstacle, but I put in the enemies here. Also, cannonades to me look very similar to the cannons from the Super Mario franchise, and they seem to have pretty much the same functionality. Obviously, a cannon's not an original idea, so no one stole this from the other. I just find it really interesting just how similar these look. Tashiya. Tashiyas are octopuses that walk around balancing a circus ball with their breath. They're often found in tight corridors, meaning Tails will have to defeat them to get by. Very interestingly, the next game that has new enemies in the Sonic series is yet another Tails game. This one is Tails Adventure. This is a puzzle platforming game where Tails must use tools like bombs and hammers to navigate through the level. The very first enemies in these games are Combat Hoverpod. These are bird soldiers that are notably not robots, but rather some sort of bird species. The Hoverpod's only means of attack is shooting a flamethrower at Tails. Combat Walker. Combat Walkers are small mechanical walkers that traverse the ground and are piloted by the same kind of bird soldier as the Combat Hoverpod. The Combat Walker will attack by firing bullets from their front cannon. As these guys will fire a steady stream of bullets, Tails must fly over them and drop a bomb on them to defeat them. Bat Robot. Bat Robots, as their name implies, are bat robots. They will hang from the ceiling with their eyes closed until Tails gets near. When Tails gets close enough, they will open their eyes and swoop down to attack. Nezu. Nezus are green robot mice. These mice will move around the ground and place bombs in Tails' path. If Tails is flying in the air, however, the Nezu will not move at all, making them extremely easy to defeat by dropping a bomb on them. Jumping Combatant. These are the same bird soldiers from earlier seen controlling both the Combat Walker and the Combat Hoverpod. These ones, as their name implies, are jumpers. They jump in a very distinct pattern. They will jump 2 times straight into the air and then 1 time at the player, and then repeat this pattern over and over again. Bomb Throwing Combatant. Continuing with these bird soldiers, we now have ones that throw bombs. Rock Throwing Combatant. Okay, do I really have to explain this one? This is the bird people, but they throw rocks. Combat Mini-Sub. Combat Mini-Subs are submarines piloted by the bird soldiers. Sometimes these combat subs are found alone, while other times they are found in groups of 2. They only found in levels where Tails is seen piloting the Sea Fox, a 1-person submarine. They attack by firing projectiles at him. Tails can defeat them with any attack from the Sea Fox. If one in the group of 2 is defeated, the other one will flee. Flying Bomber. Flying Bombers are flying variations of the bird soldiers that carry bombs in their feet. They are seen in Sea Fox levels, where they will swoop down and try to drop bombs on Tails. The only weapon that Tails can use from the Sea Fox to destroy them is the anti-air missile. Drill Mole. Back to some robot enemies, we have the Drill Mole, who is a robot mole. Much like the Burrow bot from earlier, the Drill Mole will wait underground with their nose sticking out until Tails gets near. Bee is exactly what it sounds like. They are bees that will come out of beehives in order to attack. The beehives will spawn bees infinitely, so in order to stop them, you have to defeat the beehive to prevent more bees from coming out. But destroying a beehive will summon a queen bee. Queen bees are simply larger bee enemies that will chase Tails throughout the level. They cannot be defeated by every weapon and require a bomb to be killed. Little cuckoo. Small cuckoos are small bird enemies. Sometimes they are seen alone, but more often they are found in large groups. They move extremely quickly and will attack by trying to kick Tails. Sniper cuckoo. Sniper cuckoos are bird soldiers with sniper rifles. These guys will sit behind walls and only pop out to shoot at Tails. Tails must wait for them to pop out from their hiding spot in order to attack them. Cannon launcher. Cannon launchers are bird soldiers manning one-man cannons. The cannons fire bullets either in a straight line or diagonally upwards. The cannon cannot fire downward, meaning if Tails gets below them, they will be unable to hit him. Pilot combatant. Pilot combatants are exactly what they sound like, the bird soldiers flying airplanes. These planes have two attack patterns, either flying in a straight line from right to left or left to right, or diving down from the top of the screen. While doing either attack pattern, they will also be shooting bullets in a straight line. Robo cuckoo. These are robot versions of the bird soldiers seen in this game. These little guys will continuously spawn from conveyor belts. The robots themselves don't actually move, but are rather carried along the conveyor belts, acting more as obstacles than enemies. Moving on from Tails Adventure, we have Sonic's Labyrinth. Sonic's Labyrinth is an isometric Sonic game that removes Sonic's speed with slow-down shoes that he has been tricked into wearing. And no, I'm making none of this up. This is the literal lore of this game. The first enemy in this game is the Flawawa, who are flower badnik enemies that release spores to attack Sonic. Pepe. Pepes are rubber duck robots. They roll along the ground and leave puddles of sticky white substance that Sonic will get stuck in if he steps in it. What the sticky white substance is completely unknown. Tori are robot penguins that spawn infinitely and slide across the screen diagonally trying to hit Sonic. They have a very similar appearance to the Penguinator enemy from Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Kabutoto are robot horseshoe crabs, making them the 10th robot based on a crab so far. Their names come from the Japanese word kabutogani, meaning horseshoe crab. This word is also the same origin for the Pokemon Kabuto as well. There's only one Kabutoto seen in all of Sonic Labyrinth, and it guards the key to the next level of the game, and can be defeated with any spin dash. Ototos are shark robots that move quickly back and forth. They are only seen in cannon sections of Sonic's Labyrinth, and designed to get in the way as Sonic is launched out of the cannon. Poyoyos are blob badniks based on the garbage Poyos from the Puyo Puyo series, which Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine is a reskin of. They were only seen in Sonic's Labyrinth and are scattered on the ground and slowly inch along it. The only thing making these guys difficult at all is that they come in large numbers, making them decently hard to avoid. Takokos are octopus badniks with spikes on their heads. They cannot be defeated at all, so Sonic must simply just avoid them. Takokos will attack in two ways. First by creating oil slicks on the ground, and the second by releasing sparks that will hurt Sonic. Yarokaka is our 11th crab robot enemy. I really find it silly how much Eggman really loves crabs. These little guys will simply walk back and forth in set locations, not attacking at all. Kibabas are robots that seem to be based on nothing, that simply sit still and launch missiles out in 8 directions. The missiles are launched one at a time and come out in a clockwise pattern. Mukakas are strange robots that are found in groups of 3 that follow each other around. Their movement is quick and erratic, making them hard to deal with. Auroros are bird badniks that stand on a platform disconnected from the rest of the level, making them impossible to get to. Because they're impossible to get to, Sonic can obviously not defeat him. These little guys will attack by shooting arrows from their platforms. Bororos are badniks that move along the ground extremely slowly. Every few seconds they will stick out their long tongue as a way of attacking Sonic. Dragogo are robot dragons that pop out of the ground to attack Sonic. When they do so, they can knock Sonic over and then shoot a fireball at him to attack. And I know everyone's noticed it by now, but seriously, like every character in this game just has a name that's repeating, like Dragogo, Bororo, Ororo, Makaka, and our next one, Gabubu. Gabubus are piranha robots that hop out of the water to try and bite Sonic. They are very similar to the Chopper and Masher from Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Gaikoko are skull badniks that will appear out of thin air. They hover around areas shooting fire from their mouths to attack. As these seem to be some sort of undead robot, they cannot be destroyed at all, so Sonic must simply avoid them. Nyororo Auroros are snake robots that slither slowly back and forth. Once they see Sonic, they will speed up a bit and follow him for a while. Sonic can get away from them simply by breaking their line of sight. Robo-Toto. Robo-Toto are robots based on, well, robots. More specifically, toy robots. These little guys will spawn out of nowhere and then walk a set distance and explode. The Robo-Toto will spawn endlessly, which means they can easily overwhelm Sonic. Moving on to our next group of enemies, we have enemies from Sonic 3D Blast, which, despite its name, is actually a 2D game with 3D models that were converted into sprites. None of these enemies have official names, but they all have names that were found in the code for the game that are used for the enemies. First is Hunter. Hunter is our 12th crab robot. These robots will sit still with spikes floating around them for defense. As with this and most badniks in this game, Sonic must defeat them in order to release a flicky that will help you advance in the level. Scouter. Scouters are flying wasp badniks. They will simply fly in a set pattern until Sonic gets near, then they will chase him around the level. Snake. Snake is a bit of a misnomer, as this is actually a caterpillar enemy with very similar design to the Caterkiller. Instead of crawling on the ground like the Caterkiller though, the snake will jump out of holes in the ground and land inside of other holes in the ground and repeat this process until they are destroyed. Very similar to the Caterkiller though, they can only be destroyed by hitting their head. Bee. As you might have guessed, bees are bee robots. These little guys will fly around in strange and erratic patterns. However, they will not try to attack Sonic, simply sticking to their strange flying patterns. Crook. Crooks, like bees, have no way of actually attacking Sonic. They are alligator badniks that simply walk back and forth in specific areas. Dragfly. Dragflies are dragonfly badniks that, much like the bee enemy, fly around erratically with no means of attacking Sonic at all. Fish. Fish are badniks that will swim in a diagonal pattern back and forth. Periodically, they will inflate themselves to extend their spikes outward. This will make them invulnerable to attacks. When these little guys aren't inflated, they can simply be defeated by any spin jump. Shell. Shells are badnik clam enemies that move around the ground in this strange pattern. When they see Sonic, they will speed up and chase him around the level. Despite their model clearly having spikes on its back, Sonic can just jump on top of them anyway and defeat them. Spider. Spiders are badniks that move diagonally on the ground back and forth. Though these guys look very menacing, they have no way of attacking Sonic. Just like the shell too, they have spikes on their head, but they're completely ineffective as Sonic can just jump right on them to defeat them. Bunny. Bunnies are robots on pogo sticks that will hop around randomly until Sonic gets near. As Sonic approaches, they will begin to hop towards him rather than randomly. Pengo. Pengos are penguin badniks that waddle on a diagonal path back and forth. Like many enemies in this game, they have no sort of offense and won't try to attack Sonic. Snowman. Snowmen are robots that move back and forth extremely quickly. After a few seconds, they will stop moving and fire snowballs from a gun in their hat in a circle pattern and then continue moving. In Diamond Dust Zone, there are also snowmen that don't move at all and simply blow up as Sonic gets near them. But these are more obstacles than actual enemies, but I'll still list them here. Bat. Bats are badniks that will fly around in small areas in seemingly random patterns. This is extremely similar to the bee enemy from earlier, and just like the bee, they have no means of attacking Sonic. Bug. Bugs are spiked robots that move around in designated areas. Like the spider and shell before it, their spikes are purely cosmetic and do not hurt Sonic at all. Firefly. Fireflies are another robot whose name is a bit of a misnomer, as they are clearly based on mosquitoes. They are similar to the bat and bee, flying around erratically and making no effort to attack. Scorpy. Scorpies are scorpion badniks that move back and forth in diagonal lines, but make no effort to attack Sonic. Seriously, the enemies in Sonic 3D Blast make very little effort to hurt you. Mouse. Mouses are small robots that will chase Sonic when he gets near them. Now, serious question, these robots are named Mouse, but would multiple of them be mice or mouses? Honestly, what would you call them, mice or mouses? Because I have mouses written down in my script, and I'm sticking with that. Octopus. Octopus are badniks found sitting on the ground that act as turrets shooting blue projectiles. When Sonic is near, they can also move short distances to get closer to Sonic before shooting. Walker. Walkers are badniks that will walk in diagonal lines and fire projectile from their 4 cannons. Alright, that's all I gotta say about those little guys. Whirl. Whirl, like many other flying badniks in this game, simply float around and don't attack Sonic. Honestly, the design by Dr. Eggman on these robots is quite horrendous. Alright, moving on in games, we go to our next group of enemy who are from Sonic Blast. The Game Gear version called Sonic Blast, not to be confused with the game we were just doing, Sonic 3D Blast. The first enemy is Sand Dooms. Sand Dooms are strange robots found in holes that move along the ground and fire projectiles upward. Octopus. Octopus is an octopus badnik only seen in Sonic Blast. They fly or swim up and down in the water or air. Egg Pogo. As you would guess based on their names, Egg Pogos are robots that bounce up and down on the ground. They're usually found in areas with low ceilings, making them hard to avoid. Egg Saucer. Egg Saucers are badniks that float back and forth in set areas. When they see Sonic, they will quickly charge at him at high speeds. Egg Sentry. Egg Sentries are robot turrets that wait for Sonic to get near and then fire projectiles. These badniks will sit in set locations and don't move themselves at all, nor do they adjust their gun, making them fire in the same place over and over. Alright, it's time to make a huge leap in games, because this is where we go from 2D Sonic to 3D Sonic. Sonic. And of course, the next game has to be Sonic Adventures. And even though we had Sonic 3D Blast, which was not 3D at all, this is truly the first 3D Sonic game. This game is considered a classic to many, but also many consider it pretty bad. Maybe it's a bad classic, but I know I loved this game and its sequel, Sonic Adventure 2, when I was younger. The first two enemies for this game are Kikis. Kikis are bomb-throwing robots that have an extremely similar look to that of the coconut from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. These monkey badniks are known for throwing explosives to attack. These little guys are seen in many games, including Sonic Adventures 1 and 2, and Sonic Advance 1 and 2. In Sonic Advance, they are seen climbing trees very similar to coconuts. And honestly, I think you could make a good argument that Kikis and coconuts are the exact same enemy, but Sega seems to think they're different enemies, and the Sonic Wiki also sees them as separate enemies, so whatever. Rhino Tank. Rhino Tanks are rhino badniks that move back and forth in small areas until Sonic gets near, where they will try and charge him. Honestly, in all their appearances, they move pretty slow, so they can easily be avoided. Sweeper. Sweepers are water strider robots that stand on water. When Sonic gets near a Sweeper, it will attempt to attack him with its long nose. Due to their lack of speed and being extremely easy to defeat, it is unlikely we will ever see their attack unless you're trying to see it. Boa Boa. Boa Boas are large flying worm-like badniks that release fire from their sides. They are defeated by destroying any part of their body as long as they aren't releasing flames from that part of the body at that time. These little guys are only seen in Sonic Adventure. Leon. Leons are robot chameleons that, like mutants, can turn invisible. They also have the ability to attack by sticking their tongues out. There's actually a really interesting fact about these little enemies. In the original release of this game for the Gamecast, the attack of sticking out their tongue worked completely fine. But in Sonic Adventure's DX Director's Cut and the 2010 remaster of this game, they will never stick out their tongue at all. This is due to their invisibility timer being too fast thanks to their increased frame rate, meaning they will turn visible, invisible, visible, invisible without ever sticking out their tongues, as the timer will move way too quick. Spinner. Spinners are floating robots with blades floating around them that are meant to look like bats. Most spinners will sit completely still with their blades spinning around him. Often chains of them are over long gaps, which Sonic can use his homing attack to defeat them and get over. These little guys will only deal damage if Sonic hits them directly in their blades, which are easy to avoid. In Sonic Frontiers, these little guys will not sit still, but will instead move forward towards Sonic to attack. Thunder Spinner. Thunder Spinners are a variation of the spinner that will also sit still. Periodically, they will put an electric shield around them, which will prevent them from being destroyed. In most games, they have their own unique green look, but sometimes they are purple and look very similar to the standard spinners. Pirate. Pirates are badniks that look like little pirate puppets. They will run around in circles wielding swords on the pirate ships in Knuckles' version of Casinopolis. Honestly, I played a lot of Sonic Adventure as a kid and I have never seen these things. Ice Ball. Ice balls are robots that sit inside of turrets that fire cold air that will freeze Sonic if he touches it. If these little guys' turrets are destroyed, they will waddle around unable to hurt Sonic at all. Ice Caps. Unnamed aircraft. These are robot airplanes that fly by and drop bombs on Sonic and Tails during the snowboarding section in the stage Ice Cap. Obviously, they're unnamed. As you can tell, I called them Ice Caps Unnamed Aircraft. Booyoon. Booyoons are rabbit badniks that have a gel that can make them extremely large. While in the bigger state, all attacks that hit the gel will bounce the player backwards. To defeat them, you must use an attack on their head, which will completely destroy them. Kart Kiki. Kart Kikis are Kikis seen driving bumper cars and will try and run over Sonic. If Kart Kikis are defeated, Sonic can then jump in the bumper car and drive it himself. Cop Speeders. Cop Speeders are cop car-like hovercrafts piloted by Kikis. They have extremely quick movement speed and will drive in arcing patterns, making them difficult to deal with. These little guys also return in Sonic Generations, but their movement is a lot less erratic, making them much easier to deal with. Beat. Beats are insect-like badniks that come in large swarms. The little robots will slowly crawl towards Sonic and explode if they get close enough. Sonic can easily dispatch these quickly with spin attacks and homing attacks. Egg Keeper. Egg Keeper are robots that sit still until Sonic gets near. When Sonic gets near, they will throw their heads that has a tractor beam-like attack that will stun the player. When stunned, the Egg Keeper will then charge at Sonic to attack. The Egg Keepers can only be defeated by attacking their head while it is detached from their body, as if you try to attack it while it's attached to the body, they will deflect all incoming attacks. Spark Units. Spark Units are robots that shoot lasers that cannot be passed through by the player. They usually come in groups that create a wall of impassable lasers. They can be defeated by any attack, and when they are defeated, their laser will disappear, allowing Sonic to pass. Fighter Aircraft A. Fighter Aircraft A's are gray fighter plane robots that will charge at Sonic in the tornado sections of the game. Along with charging, some of them can also fire bullets to attack. Fightercraft B. These are mostly the same as Fightercraft A's, but usually they appear from behind Sonic and Tails. Mechanical Fish. Mechanical Fish are, well, mechanical fish that swim around in pools of water during the Big Cat sections of Sonic Adventure. They can be fished out of the water and weigh between 600 and 1600 grams. There's also a bigger mechanical fish only seen in Twinkle Park that weighs 800 to 2000 grams. Skydeck's unnamed jet fighter. These are jet robots that look very similar to fighter aircraft A, but they have missiles. They'll fly through the air and drop bombs on Sonic to attack. These robots can be destroyed before taking off, but once they're in the air, they're nearly impossible to kill as they are too high. But if Sonic can get up there somehow, he can still attack them. Satellites. Satellites are small egg-shaped robots that will release cold air trying to freeze Sonic. These little guys are only seen in the Chaos 6 boss fight. During the boss fight, Sonic must hit the satellites to stun them. While stunned, Chaos will inhale them, which will freeze him, allowing him to be attacked. Orca. Orcas are simply large whales, and they first showed up in Sonic Adventures to chase Sonic. This orca chase scene became so iconic it was reused in Sonic 2006 and Sonic Generations. Changing up the games, we have all the enemies from Sonic Shuffle. Now, most of you probably don't know Sonic Shuffle, but it is a game that was developed by Hudson Soft, the people who made Mario Party. And this game has a very Mario Party-like feel, with the characters moving around spaces on the board and events happening. The enemies in this game are kind of just random monsters, and they don't really have much to them other than their unique designs. All of them just attack and get attacked, so I'll list them off fairly quickly. Oh yeah, and none of them have names either, so I'm just gonna describe them. First, we have Shark with Ice Skates, Surfing Yeti, Fishing Palm Tree with Scarf and Mittens, Bee that looks very much like a buzzer, Torpedo with Wings that looks like a knockoff Bullet Bill, Winged Robot Fish, Horned Monkey, Red Snake, Broccoli Monster, a weird lady with two whips, a pistol-wielding cowboy, a green horse in a covered wagon, a weird-shaped monster, another weird-shaped monster, and a third weird-shaped monster. And last for this game, there are 6 gem monsters known as Precious Stone Amethyst, Crystal, Diamond, Garnet, Pearl, and Sapphire. And no, I'm not talking about the characters from Steven Universe. Moving forward, we have the sequel to the classic Sonic Adventures, Sonic Adventures 2. The first enemies we see here are the Mono Beetle, who are some of the most common enemies in Sonic Adventure 2. These little guys simply float in the air and don't attack at all. Much like spinners from before, they can be used as stepping stones to get across large gaps. Spark Beetle. Spark Beetles are a variation of the Mono Beetle that periodically will put out an electric field around themselves that will hurt the player. Some will sit still, while others will move slowly at Sonic. Spring Beetle. Spring Beetles are another variation of the beetle that have a spring on their back. If Sonic uses a homing attack on one of these enemies, Sonic will be bounced into the air rather than destroying the robot. The only way to destroy this enemy at all is to use the light speed attack. Bomb Beetle. Bomb Beetles are a variation of the beetle that fly around and drop bombs. Not too much to say, that's all they do. Gun Beetle. Gun Beetles are beetles armed with guns that will shoot at the player. Well, in most games they can only be armed with one type of gun that just shoots one simple projectile. In Shadow the Hedgehog they can have 3 different kinds of guns: a submachine gun, a semi-automatic rifle, and a 4-shot RPG. All these weapons can be picked up by Shadow the Hedgehog in this game. Once Shadow destroys these gun robots, he can then pick up their weapons. Gold Beetle. Gold Beetles are simply mono beetles, but golden. They appear in 3 different games: Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Sonic Generations. In Sonic Advance 2 and Sonic Generations, they will appear for a few seconds before disappearing for good. In these games, they have no means of attack, and the only way to get them to respawn is to die and start over. In Shadow the Hedgehog, they serve as an upgraded version of the Gun Beetle, taking an extra hit to the feet and having guns to attack. Gunwing. Gunwings are very similar acting to the Gun Beetle. The only real difference between these 2 enemies is that the Gunwing will move around while the Gun Beetle will remain stationary. Gun Hawk. Gun Hawks are large floating robots with spikes in the front that will move towards Sonic. On top of attacking with their spikes, they will also fire bullets periodically. Laser Hawk. Laser Hawks are very similar to the Gun Hawk, but they fire a laser rather than shooting a projectile. Skyhawk. Skyhawks are a variation of the Gun Hawk that have wings instead of hovering fans. This variation has no guns, but will attack by trying to ram the player. Hornet 3. Hornet 3 are floating robots with 3 bombs around them that they fire at the player. Once they fire their bombs, they no longer have a way to attack and will just slowly move around until the player destroys them. Hornet 6. This is pretty much identical to the Hornet 3, but it has 6 bombs as opposed to 3. Hornet 9. I'm not even going to explain this one, you can follow the logic. Laser Hornet. Laser Hornet is very similar to Hornet 3, but instead of bombs, they have laser guns. Phoenix. Phoenix is the red variation of the Hornet 3 that moves faster. On top of being able to move faster, they are also able to reload their bombs, unlike other Hornets. However, they will only do this reload if the player is out of range. Gun Hunter. Gun Hunters are humanoid robots that will fire a gun to attack. They will start out in the fetal position completely inactive, but when the player gets near, they will activate. Others will be dropped from the sky, and in the case of Sonic Rush, some will even teleport. Laser Hunters. Laser Hunters are pretty much identical to Gun Hunters, but they shoot a laser gun rather than a standard projectile. Shield Hunters. Shield Hunters are nearly completely identical to the Laser Hunter, but as you might guess, they have a shield. This makes them much harder to destroy, but but if you can get behind them, they are very easy to defeat. Rhino Jet. Rhino Jets are slow-moving rhino robots that patrol small areas. As you would think, a rhino will try to attack by ramming at the player. Rhino Spike. The Rhino Spike acts extremely similar to the Rhino Jet, but they are much harder to destroy as they have spikes on top. The best way to defeat them is either with a somersault from Sonic or by punching them with Knuckles. Rhino Cannon. Unlike the Rhino Jet and Rhino Spike, the Rhino Cannon is a stationary enemy. They will simply sit still and shoot bombs in an arcing pattern at the player. The bombs do not explode right away, so they can be picked up and thrown back at them. Rhino Metal. Rhino Metals are the stronger version of the standard Rhino. They're actually nearly indestructible, only being able to be defeated by Sonic's Magic Hands ability. Blue Eagle. Blue Eagles are jet robots equipped with different weapons like guns, lasers, and bombs. In Sonic Adventure 2, these enemies can be destroyed, but when they return in Sonic Generations, they are indestructible. Boo. No, that's the Mario Boo. I'm talking about this Boo. And yes, I know there's a ghost in Mario named Boo, and there's a ghost in Sonic named Boo. It's very silly. Boos are ghost enemies that will laugh whenever they do pretty much anything. In Sonic Adventure 2, they can attack directly at the player to damage them, or they can do their patented grab move, which will stun the player. They are pretty much standard enemies in this game, being able to be destroyed by any attack. In Sonic Lost World, the Boos are completely indestructible. They come in rows and move from left to right. Boom Boo. Boom Boo are larger variants of the Boo that, despite their name, do not explode. Their distinctive feature is that they have stitches over their mouth, which standard Boos do not. Because they are bigger in Sonic Adventure 2, they take 3 hits to the feet. With each hit, they get smaller and smaller. In Sonic Lost World, they are functionally identical to the Boo, moving left to right and being completely indestructible obstacles. E1000. E1000s are the upgraded version of the E100 series, which Ganima from Sonic Adventure 1 was a part of. Unlike the E100, the E1000s have dual cannon arms. While some E1000 robots will simply stand still and fire projectiles, others have the ability to hover in the air and shoot projectiles. Artificial Chaos P1. Artificial Chaos P1 is the first in a series of enemies made by Eggman that are based on Chaos from Sonic Adventure 1. The only way to destroy these robots is to attack their head, as their gel bodies are completely invulnerable to damage. The P1 has 2 different attacks. The first is extending out its tentacles and making a circle trying to hit the player, and the other is firing a laser from its single eye. Float Type. Float Type is the next of the Chaos-based enemies, and as you might suspect, the Float Type, well, floats. These only have 1 attack, which is the same tentacle attack as the P1. Artificial Chaos P100. Artificial Chaos P100 is nearly identical to the Float Type, but they don't attack. Instead, when they see the player, they will break into a bunch of cells that will attack Sonic. While the cells can be defeated one by one, simply defeating the Artificial Chaos P100's head will destroy all the cells. Cell. As mentioned, the cells are the small enemies that break off from the Artificial Chaos P100. Guard Type. Guard Types are variations of the Artificial Chaos P, but they will hide their heads inside of their bodies until they are ready to attack. While their heads are inside their body, they're completely invulnerable, so you must wait for them to try to attack in order to defeat them. Alright, I don't know who was naming Sonic games, but honestly, this was one of the worst naming conventions of all time, because we go from Sonic Adventures to Sonic Advance. Honestly, it's very confusing having Sonic Adventure and Sonic Advance. But in Sonic Advance, our very first enemy is Gammy Gammy. Gammy Gammy is a 13th crab enemy that acts very similar to crab meat, shooting projectiles from its claws. Their main difference from the crab meat is they are much faster and much more aggressive. Kuro Kuro. Kuro Kuros are purple frog badnets that simply hop forward. They really aren't much of a threat as they don't adjust to the player at all, they just keep hopping. Mogu. Mogus are mole badniks that attack by popping out of the ground periodically. They don't throw any projectiles or do anything, they just go in and out of that hole. Sunbon. Sunbon are pufferfish that look exactly like Poindexter's, another pufferfish robot, extending their spikes in and out and can be killed while their spikes are retracted. Honestly, these are pretty much the exact same enemy. Tentau. Tentaus are ladybug badniks that have the ability to fly, setting them apart from other ladybug enemies like the Moto Bug. They also have the ability to attack by releasing energy projectiles from their wing. Hanabi. Hanabi are lizard robots that will roll back and forth. Periodically, they will stop to attack, shooting an orange projectile from their mouth. Pierrettes. Pierrettes are clone robots that are half humanoid and half ball. They roll around in their ball while juggling small balls. The only way to destroy them is to attack the humanoid half, as if Sonic runs into the ball, they will be bounced back. Slot. Slots are bat badniks that fly back and forth, dropping coins on the player in order to hurt them. Drisame. Drisame are shark badniks that hide in walls and break out of them to surprise Sonic. Honestly, I can't think of a more scary jump scare than a robot shark coming out of a wall.
Oh yeah!
Kura. Kura are jellyfish badniks that float from left to right. Periodically, they will stop and surround themselves with electricity. This temporarily makes them invulnerable to attacks and will damage Sonic. Pen. Pens are badnik penguins that, in Sonic Advance, attack by throwing snowballs. In Sonic Advance 2, they return, but they act more like penguinators, using their jet boosters to move around quickly. However, unlike standard penguinators, the Sonic Advance 2 pens will never stand upright. Yukimaru. Yukimaru are badnik snowmen that are found either on the ground or on walls. They move back and forth and attack by shooting snowballs out of their head. Wamu. Wamu are badnik caterpillars with a very similar look to the Caterkiller Jr. But unlike the Caterkiller Jr., they do not have electricity to defend themselves with. Though they do lack this electric ability, they are still required to be hit in the head to destroy them. Muir. Muirs are turret robots that attack like every single turret, firing projectiles. Before attacking, they will simply fly around. In this form, they are completely indestructible. However, when they open up to start firing, this is when they can be destroyed. Oct. Oct are floating badnik octopuses. While flying sideways, they will stop and shoot a purple projectile downwards to attack. Going from Sonic Advance enemies, we go to Sonic Advance 2 enemies, where we have Mon. Mon are the newest monkey badniks created by Dr. Robotnik. They simply jump up and down when the player is near. Korra. Korra are badnik turtles that move slowly back and forth. If the player jumps on their back, rather than destroying the turtle will jump up, propelling the player upwards similar to a spring. Kubanaga. Kubanaga are snake-like robots that come out of bases on the floor or wall. As they pop out of their bases, they will aim and then shoot a fireball to attack. Kurakura. Kurakura are jellyfish badniks with a flaming orb hanging below them. The orb is actually the only way for them to deal damage, as their bodies will not hurt the player. Bell. Bell's names are pretty self-explanatory, as they are simply Bell badnik. These little guys are found hanging from the ceiling, but make absolutely no attempt to attack. The only way to get hurt by them is to run directly into them, which is really easy to avoid because they just hang there. Circus. Circus are dark blue monkey badniks with a very similar look to the Kiki, but they have large balls, with Eggman's face on them that they juggle around.
All I have in this world is my balls and my word.
Pico Pico. Pico Pico is a hammer-wielding clown badnik. These little guys will constantly swing their hammer to attack. Yato. Yato is the 14th enemy robot based on a crab. Yatos are enemies that will remain completely stationary, often hiding in their shells. If the player jumps on their shells while they're hiding in them, they will bounce them into the air like a spring. Periodically, they will pop out of their shells and shoot a small projectile to attack, and then retreat back into their shell. While they are popped out, they can be destroyed by being hit by any non-jump attack. Balloon. Balloon is perhaps the worst named badnik of all time, as they are octopuses and not balloons. They float back and forth in the air with a laser that they shoot downwards every few seconds. Hammerhead. Hammerheads are sharks that hop out of the water. They have flat heads and therefore can be used as platforms to get over watery areas. They can also be destroyed by being attacked from below. Modillo. Modillo is another enemy from Sonic Advance 2. These armadillo badniks walk back and forth and roll into a ball to attack Sonic. While in ball form, they are completely invulnerable, but when they are uncurled, they can be defeated easily. Straw. Straws are bird badniks that fly around and dive bomb at Sonic to attack. Flicky. Flicky is the robot version of the friendly animal bird called Flicky. See, they're spelled different. One has an E and one doesn't. These badniks have a long tail made of spikes that follows the bird behind them. Unlike most bird enemies, these little things don't fly and instead hop on the ground. Kyura. Kyura are badniks that float around in the air and teleport around. Their main way of attacking is by firing a laser downward at the player. Star. Stars are badniks that sit in place and wait for the player to get near. Once the player is near, they will start spinning in place and become invulnerable to attack. After a few seconds, they will stop spinning and can be attacked as normal. Gigi Gigi. Gigi Gigi are spiked caterpillar enemies with purple bodies and a red head. Like most caterpillar enemies in Sonic, they can only be killed by attacking their head and not their body. But unlike most other caterpillar enemies, these ones fly in the air up and down. Mouse. Mouse are small badnik mice that move back and forth on the ground. When Sonic gets near, instead of just moving back and forth, they will charge the player trying to hurt him. Because they are so small, they are extremely easy to avoid. Moving on from Sonic Advance 2, the next game to introduce some new enemies was Sonic Heroes. Sonic Heroes is a notable game in the Sonic franchise, as it was the first one released on the Xbox and PlayStation. The first enemies introduced in these games are the Egg Pawns. These are humanoid robots that look a lot like Eggman and are seen in many Sonic the Hedgehog titles, starting with Sonic Heroes. While some Egg Pawns are unarmed and have no weapons, some are armed with spears, guns, bazookas, and shields. Egg Pawn Casino version. In Sonic Heroes, Egg Pawn also comes in its casino version, which is identical to the standard Egg Pawn with different aesthetics. They come in bunny, clown, and manager look. Solid Pawn. Solid Pawns are stronger versions of the Egg Pawn. They're only seen in 2 games, Sonic Heroes and Sonic Rush. In Sonic Heroes, the power formation is required to destroy these strong enemies. In Sonic Rush, you must attack the Solid Pawn either from above or behind, as it will deflect all other attacks with their shield. Egg Knight. Egg Knights are basically just Egg Pawns, but with more health. They even have the same weapons. Egg Bishop. Egg Bishops are wizard-like variations of the Egg Pawn. In Sonic Heroes, they are healers. They replenish the health of other robots nearby. In Sonic Rush, instead of healing, they will shoot energy projectiles from their wands. Egg Magician. Egg Magicians have a very similar look to the Egg Bishop. They attack by creating a blue circle on the ground that drains rings from the player. If a character stands too close to the Egg Magician for too long, they will disappear and not return until the Egg Magician is defeated. Flapper. Flappers are the flying variation of the Egg Pawn. They have 2 basic attack patterns. They either fly in place or patrol a small area looking for Sonic. Either way, they aren't armed with guns and have no way to attack the player. Cannon Flapper. Cannon Flappers are the variation of flappers that are armed with cannons and fire laser bullets. They will usually float out of range of most attacks. This makes them extremely tricky to destroy. Gun Flapper. Gun Flappers are the blue variation of the flapper enemy equipped with a gun. Much like the Cannon Flapper, they will sit out of reach of most attacks. But unlike the Cannon Flapper, they will fire a continual stream of bullets at the player. Needle Flapper. Needle Flappers are the spiked version of the flappers. Much like the standard flappers, they usually sit in one place. But instead of having no defense, they will extend and retract spikes from their bodies to hurt the player. While they can be destroyed while their spikes are out, this is much more difficult. If the player simply waits for the spikes to be withdrawn, they are much easier to defeat. Bomb Flapper. Bomb Flappers are a pink variation of the flapper that float around in the air and attack by dropping bombs. Laser Flapper. Laser Flappers are obviously flappers equipped with lasers. They are seen in both Sonic Heroes and Sonic Rush. These are very similar to the gun and cannon flappers, but firing a laser instead. Search Flapper. Search Flappers are yellow flappers that are equipped with a spotlight. When a Search Flapper spots the player, it will summon a group of Egg Pawns to attack them. Though you would think the spotlight would be used to spot the player, it actually doesn't use the spotlight at all. Solid Flapper. Solid Flappers are stronger flapper enemies that require the power formation to be destroyed in Sonic Heroes. Every single version of the flapper has a solid form, including Search Flapper, Laser Flapper, Bomb Flapper, Needle Flapper, Gun Flapper, Cannon Flapper, and regular Flapper, which I just listed. Egg Hammer. Egg Hammer are large hammer-wielding enemies that are part of the Egg Pawn line of robots. They were first introduced in Sonic Heroes, where they can only be damaged by power characters. The Egg Hammer returns as an enemy in Sonic Rush and in Sonic Colors, but they are completely redesigned. In these games, they are much smaller and have no leg, but they still have their namesake hammers. Heavy Egg Hammer. Egg Hammers are the strongest enemy in Sonic Heroes. They are immune to almost every normal attack. To hurt them, you must knock off their helmets, which reveals their weak spot. And even when this weak spot is revealed, it can only be hit by power characters. Cameron. Cameron is a turtle robot that sleeps in its shell. They attack with cannons on their back that is used to fire a hoop energy projectile. Despite the hoop being empty in the middle, the inside of the ring still has a hitbox and will damage Sonic. If you attack Cameron with most attacks, they will simply retreat into their shells. So in order to defeat them, you must first flip them over onto their backs and then attack them to destroy them. Gold Cameron. Gold Camerons are the upgraded versions of the Cameron. They are completely immune to power formation attacks and therefore must be flipped on their back in order to be defeated. Both the Cameron and the Gold Cameron are only seen in Sonic Heroes. Plagueon. Plagueon are jellyfish enemies introduced in Sonic Heroes. In the game, they will try and capture the playable character and must be destroyed by one of the other playable characters if they are captured. In Sonic Rush and Sonic Generations, Plagueons return, but this time they hold bombs and will drop them to hurt the player. Gold Plagueon. Much like the Gold Cameron, the Gold Plagueon is simply a stronger version of the Plagueon. However, if a Gold Plagueon captures the player, they will teleport them away to a different dimension, which will remove the player from the active party until the Team Blast is used or a checkpoint is reached. Rhino Liner. Rhino Liners are robots only seen in grinding sections. They will always be seen grinding on rails and will fire spiked balls to try and attack the player. Whenever a Rhino Liner reaches the end of a rail, if it was not destroyed already, it will explode and destroy itself. Pumpkin Ghost. Pumpkin Ghosts are enemies that disappear if they are attacked or touched by the player. They come in 3 different sizes: regular, large, and extra large. Very similar to a t-shirt. E2000. E2000s are robots only seen in the final level of Sonic Heroes. They are fairly strong enemies and will block incoming attacks with their shield. To destroy them, the player must wait for the E2000 to shoot, leaving them vulnerable to attack. E2000R. E2000Rs are extremely identical to the E2000s, but they take more damage to destroy. Falco. No, not Falco from Star Fox, but rather Falco, the enemy from Sonic Heroes. Falcos are flying robots that will fly around and drop egg pawns into the fight with Sonic. The only other game besides Sonic Heroes they're seen in is Sonic Rush, where instead of dropping egg pawns, they will simply fly back and forth and set patterns. Jumping from 3D Sonic to 2D Sonic, next we have Sonic Advance 3. And the first enemy is the Akerento. These are ladybug badniks that are extremely similar to the Motobug. The main difference between this and the Motobug is that these little guys have black spots and they don't chase the player. Atento. Atento is actually just a palette swap of Akerento, which we just talked about. They have absolutely no differences outside of their colors, but they have different names. Condor. Condors are purple flying badniks that fly high in the sky. When they see the player, they will fly in their direction and try to drop a bomb down on them. Ape. Ape are monkey robots that are very similar to coconuts and kikis. Apes, unlike kikis and cocos, will swing back and forth from columns. Similar to kikis and coconuts though, they will attack by throwing bombs at the player. I'm unsure why in Sonic, monkey enemies' go-to attacks is throwing coconuts or bombs. Gecko Gecko. Gecko Geckos are badnik frogs with spring legs. They hop back and forth and attack by sticking their tongues out. Mini Mole. Mini Moles are mole badniks that attack by jumping out of holes in the ground. After jumping out, they will fall back into their hole and then repeat the process. Josun. Josun are badnik swordfish with harpoon noses. They are only found in areas with climbable waterfalls and will attack by doing a charging spin move. Tachon. Tachon are octopus badniks with propellers. These octopus will fly back and forth in the air and stop and spit ink to attack. Utsubo. Utsubo is a yellow eel-based badnik. These little guys pop out of hatches in the wall or on the floor to surprise attack the player. The body is broken up in segments, and much like other segmented enemies, they can only be destroyed by attacking them directly in the head. Boo Boo. Boo Boos are piggy bank badniks. They move back and forth in small set areas. If the player takes damage near the Boo Boo, they will suck up all of their rings. While Boo Boos can be extremely annoying, they aren't much of a threat as they don't have any means of attack. Gao Gao. Gao Gaos are robot lions with a wind-up key on their back. They are completely immune to all attacks from the front, but can be destroyed from behind. If Sonic tries attacking them from the front, they will simply bounce the player back. Guards. Guards are toy soldier robots found in groups of 3 in Sonic Advance 3. The guards are armed with trumpets, which they will use to fire energy projectiles at the player. Juggling. Jugglings are clown robots. They have one wheel and juggle bowling pins. The bowling pins are somehow extremely dangerous because if the player touches them, they will be damaged. Jimpy? Jimpies are adorable badnik penguins with top hats. These little guys will attack by shooting energy projectiles out of their stylish headwear. Harrison. Harrison are pufferfish robots that inflate themselves when the player gets near. After a few seconds, the Harrison will regenerate its spikes and shoot them again. Yedak. Yedak is the 15th different crab robot enemy. This version of the crab robot attacks by launching their shell into the air. After launching the shell, if they miss, they will be completely defenseless. Yukigassen. Yukigassen are badnik snowmen. They are unable to move and will sit completely still, but they will attack by throwing snowballs from their place. Clam. Clams are clam badniks armed with guns inside of their shells. Clams have an identical attack pattern to that of the Blastoid enemy from earlier, firing a bullet at a 45-degree angle and never moving. Guru Guru. Guru Guru are robot caterpillars only seen in Sonic Advance 3. Unlike most caterpillar enemies, these ones fly in the air, but just like all the other caterpillar enemies, they can only be destroyed by hitting them in the head. Kamaki. Kamaki are praying mantis badnik. Like Slicers, the Kamakis attack by throwing their claws and arcs at the player. Unlike Slicers though, they will always re-glow their claws in order to throw them again. Kayacha. Kayachas are spider badniks that hang from the ceiling by their webs. When Sonic gets near, they will drop down on him trying to hurt him. Unlike other spider enemies, they won't actually grab Sonic, but will just do damage if they hit him. Marin. Marin are pill bug robots. They curl into a ball and attack by rolling at Sonic. While they are rolled into a ball, there is no way to hurt them at all, even if Sonic rolls at them. However, characters like Amy and Cream can destroy these robots in their ball form with their hammer and chow attacks respectively. Mukaden. Mukaden are centipede-based badniks that extend and retract spikes from their body. Like almost every other enemy with segmented bodies, they must be attacked in the head in order to defeat them. The next couple of robots come from a really strange game known as Sonic X, which is an educational game based on the Sonic anime released on the Leap Star in 2006. The enemy in this game is known as the Math Robot. These are robots that block paths and can only be passed by solving math problems. There's also a couple of other math robots in the game as well. There's a math robot that must be circled a certain amount of times in order to defeat them, and ones that the player must tap a certain amount of times in order to defeat them. Honestly, these are probably the strangest Sonic enemies ever. Moving on, we have enemies from the game Sonic Rush. The first is Egg Pawn Manager Missile. This version of the Egg Pawn Manager are purple variations of the Egg Pawn that have a large rocket launcher that launches missiles at Sonic. There's also the Egg Pawn Manager Pistol, who are pretty much the same as the last ones, but they have a laser pistol that they fire. Egg Pawn Bunny. Egg Pawn Bunnies are green egg pawns with rabbit ears. They hop around on bunny sticks and usually ignore the player completely. However, sometimes they will hop at the player for seemingly no reason. Knight Pawn. Knight Pawn, not to be confused with Egg Knight, is an armor-clad silver egg pawn armed with a jousting sword. They will attack by charging at Sonic with their lance. These enemies are seen in both Sonic Rush and Sonic Generations for the 3DS. Battle Flapper. Battle Flappers are a purple variation of the Flapper that are only seen in Sonic Rush. They fly back and forth in the set area, but will attack the player when they get near. Sea pawns. Sea pawns, despite their name, are not egg pawns, but rather underwater flapper enemies. As you would suspect, these little guys are found floating around underwater and make no effort to attack. Rhino cannon. Rhino cannons are tank badniks that are exclusively seen in Sonic Rush. They have a spring on their back that will bounce the player into the air. They attack by attempting to ram the player. Despite being named the Rhino cannon, they actually have no ways of firing projectiles. Next, we have the edgiest game in the whole Sonic franchise for enemies, and it is Shadow the Hedgehog. And it starts off with Black Warrior. Black Warriors are alien-like creatures. These guys can be armed with 7 different kinds of weapons and can also be equipped with shields. Black Assassin. Black Assassins are the well-armored versions of the Black Warrior. They also gain the ability to teleport and can often be seen riding on air saucers. Black Oak. Black Oaks are the buffer version of the Black Warrior. They are much more durable than the Black Warrior, as they take 12 total homing attacks to the feet, which is just silly. Hammer Oak. Hammer Oak are the stronger version of the Black Oak that wield a hammer which they use to attack and defend themselves. Black Wings. These are small bat-like enemies. They're extremely small and can be defeated in one hit. Black Hawk. These are larger flying black creatures also only seen in Shadow the Hedgehog. Unlike the bats, they can attack by shooting a blue energy wave. Shadow can also damage them and jump on them to ride on their backs. Black Volts. Black Volts are the stronger version of the Black Hawk. They're armed with their own special version of weapons known as worm shooters that can be used while Shadow rides on their back. Sandworm. Sandworms are more enemies that are part of the Black Army. These guys will pop out of the ground in order to attack Shadow. They take between 2 and 7 hits to defeat depending on which weapon you have. Killworm. Killworms are the stronger variation of the Sandworm. As they are stronger, they can also burrow through tougher material. They are also harder to defeat as they are only vulnerable to attacks in the head. Deathworm. Deathworm is the strongest variation of the Sandworm. They are much faster and much more durable than the other versions of the worm. Death Leech. Death Leeches are small black enemies that will grow into larger ones if left alone. In the game, they are found on walls and in poisonous liquids. They have very little health and can easily be defeated, but you must defeat them quick before they get larger. Gun Soldier. Gun Soldiers are characters that have been seen in many Sonic games, but are only enemies in one, Shadow the Hedgehog. In this game, they are some of the weakest enemies, but they are equipped with a variety of weapons from guns to knives. Funnily enough, if Shadow defeats them, they will simply fall on the ground and beg for their life. Despite them begging for their life, there is actually no way for Shadow to kill them. I mean, this game is edgy, but it's still a Sonic game. Egg Piero. This is a variation of the egg pawn that is seen juggling on top of a ball. They will throw the items they are juggling at Shadow in order to attack him. When they have no more items to throw, they will try ramming into Shadow instead. Once these guys are defeated, their balls will explode, meaning you have to get away from them immediately after defeating them. Jack Bomber. Jack Bomber are a version of the Egg Piero that juggle fireballs and stand on top of pumpkins. Overall, they are mostly an aesthetic change from the Egg Piero and act pretty much the same. Egg Bomber. Egg Bombers are the stronger version of the Egg Piero that juggle bombs and stand on top of spiked balls. Gun Trooper. Gun Troopers are humanoid robots that wield RPGs, rifles, and bazookas. They are fairly durable enemies that take 4 homing attacks to defeat. Giga Troopers. Giga Troopers are simply the stronger version of the Gun Trooper, having the same guns but taking more hits to defeat. Bigfoot Type A. Gun Soldier Type A is a large robot piloted by a gun soldier. It has a very similar look to B3X Hotshot, who is fought as a boss by Shadow in Sonic Adventures 2. The boss is armed with short-range Gatling guns in order to attack, and is defeated by a total of 8 homing attacks. Bigfoot Type B. Bigfoot Type B is the stronger version of the Bigfoot Type A. They are the most durable enemy in the entire game, taking 15 total homing attacks to defeat. They're armed with the 8-shot RPG as their weapon, which fires homing missiles. Shadow Android. These are robot versions of Shadow, first seen as enemies in Shadow the Hedgehog, but first appeared in Sonic Heroes. There are several different looks for the Shadow Android, with some looking like Shadow, others being a palette swap, and some being metallic similar to Metal Sonic. Killer Plants. Killer Plants are oversized flowers that attack by breathing fire, kinda similar to a piranha plant from Mario. When a Shadow attacks them, they will simply shrink down, but they will not be destroyed. Because they cannot be destroyed, the best course of action is usually just to go around them and avoid them. Rocket Beetle. Rocket Beetles are a variation of the beetle that are armed with RPGs. This enemy is only seen in Shadow the Hedgehog. Arc Missile Turret. There's not really much to say about these, their name literally explains them. They are a missile turret. Heading to Sonic 2006, we have the Egg Bomber. Not to be confused with the Egg Bomber with 2 M's, this is the Egg Bomber spelled more properly. This is actually the 16th different crab enemy. Egg Bombers can be found in 2 different forms, their defensive ball form and their crab form. In their crab form, they attack by throwing bombs, but are defeated by 1 attack in this form. While in their ball form, they can't attack at all, but they take multiple hits to defeat. Egg Sweeper. Egg Sweepers are the enhanced version of the Egg Bomber. Other than the color change, the Sweeper also has many other upgrades from its counterpart, like the ability to go invisible, taking 2 hits to destroy while in crab form, and leaving a damaging electric field when destroyed. Egg Armor. Egg Armor are the strongest forms of the Egg Bomber and are actually indestructible while in their ball form. They have all the same abilities as the Egg Sweeper. Egg Cannon. Egg Cannons are large robots armed with many weapons like laser missiles and drills. Egg Walker. Egg Walkers are the upgraded version of the Egg Cannon. Egg Walkers will attack by firing lasers from either their cannons or cockpit. Egg Rounders. Egg Rounders are weak enemies that try to tackle Sonic in order to attack. They are usually found in large groups, making them a little tricky to defeat, and are usually led by Egg Commander. The Egg Commanders have the exact same attack pattern as the Egg Rounders, but they are the leaders of the group and will lead all of the Egg Rounders in battle. Egg Flyer. Egg Flyers are flying robots that don't have many ways to attack. They're usually seen simply flying over large pits, not doing anything. This is because Sonic is meant to homing attack them in order to get over these large pits. Egg Buster. Egg Busters are the stronger version of the Egg Flyer. They will often act as the leader of groups of robots like Egg Flyers. When Egg Busters are destroyed, all robots under their control will also be destroyed. Egg Gunner. Egg Gunners are humanoid robots that can attack by either firing missiles or their machine guns. Their machine gun bullets will take away 1 ring per hit, and the missiles are like most damage in the game, knocking all of the rings out of Sonic. Egg Stinger. Egg Stingers are the stronger variation of the Egg Gunner, but instead of having standard missiles, they have homing missiles instead. Egg Buster. Egg Busters are the strongest variation of the Egg Gunner. They have the ability to launch many homing missiles at once, but due to Sonic 2006 being an absolutely trash game, this will often lower the frame rate and make the game run like doo-doo. Egg Lancer. Egg Lancers are another type of humanoid robot found in Sonic 2006. They attack by firing 3 homing missiles every second. Egg Guardian. Egg Guardians are yet another humanoid robot found in Sonic 2006. Honestly, the enemy design in this game is really poor. The Egg Guardians attack by launching their fists at the player. Once their fists are launched at the player, it reveals underneath them were machine guns, which they can then use to attack Sonic. Egg Keeper. Egg Keepers are the stronger version of the Egg Guardians. Some versions of the Egg Keeper have spheres instead of hands that they will attack with. Egg Liner. Egg Liners are robot rhiners that attack by charging the player. While doing their charge attack, they are completely invulnerable to any attacks from the player. But even though they are invulnerable, they are locked into moving in a straight line, which means they can easily be avoided and can fall into pits. They can also leave energy spheres that will hurt the player on the ground as they attack. Egg Chaser. Egg Chasers are the golden variation of the Egg Liner. They are often seen leading groups of Egg Liners, and if destroyed, will destroy the whole group. Egg Searcher. Egg Searchers are robot bees that have 2 means of attack. The first is launching missiles like a lot of other enemies, and the second is shooting energy shots that can freeze Sonic. Egg Hunter. The Egg Hunter is the upgraded version of the Egg Searcher, and is surrounded by 4 pods that can fire lasers downward to attack. Gazer. Gazers are large worm-like beast creatures. Like most waves, they will pop out of the ground. When they do so, they will create a shockwave that can hurt the player. Once out of the ground, they have 2 ways to attack. If Sonic is far away, they will shoot fire at him, and if Sonic is nearby, they will swing their bodies trying to hit him. Iblis Worm. The Iblis Worms are lava-based worms that are actually extremely similar to the Gazer. They have a nearly identical attack pattern, but have their own unique look. Unlike the Gazer is only seen in Sonic 2006, Iblis Worm actually returns in Sonic Generations. Golem. Golems are large stone enemies that are resistant to most attacks. They also have 2 means of attack themselves, either throwing lava or slamming their large fists. Titan. Titans are the stronger variation of the Golem. They have both increased armor and increased attack. Iblis Biter. Iblis Biters are lava hound-like creatures. In Sonic 2006, they are the weakest of all of the Iblis minions and are usually found in large groups. Their main way of attacking is by spitting fire at Sonic. Trickers. Trickers are identical to the Iblis Taker. They look nearly identical but are purple instead, and they take 2 hits to defeat. Iblis Taker. Iblis Takers are lava imp-like creatures. Takers have 3 different attacks: Fireball, Dive Bomb, and Swoop. They're often found hovering over pits and can be used as stepping stones to get over those pits. Stalker. Stalkers are nearly identical to Iblis Takers, but they are purple. On top of being purple, they also take an extra hit to defeat and can shoot lasers to attack. Shadow. Not to be confused with Shadow the Hedgehog, Shadows are humanoid-like creatures only seen during the boss fight with Mephiles. They will swarm the player grabbing onto him, and once enough have grabbed onto him, they will explode to deal damage. Finally, we're away from the totally awful game Sonic 2006, and honestly totally amazing game Sonic Rivals. The first enemy in this game is Venom. Venoms are spider badniks only seen in this game. As you might suspect as a spider enemy, they attack by trying to bite the player. Vulture. Vultures, as you suspect, are vulture badniks only seen in Sonic Rivals. Like a lot of flying enemies, their only attack is swooping down at Sonic. Monoclown. Monoclowns are clown badniks. They attack with their boxing glove hands that they will extend at the player trying to hit them. Yeti. Yetis, as you might suspect, are Yeti robots. They will simply move back and forth in place until they see the player, then they will try to attack them by going after them. They're kind of boring, honestly. Metal Hound. Metal Hound is one of the laziest named badniks of all of Eggman's badniks. So I guess technically it was designed by Eggman Nega, but same difference. Metal Hounds are metal dogs. Drill Worm. Drill Worm, a lot like other worm enemies from the Sonic series, will pop out of the ground in order to attack. Unlike most worm enemies though, they are completely invulnerable to all of Sonic's attack, meaning you must completely avoid them and not attack them. Alright, let's continue with the amazing Sonic games, and we have Sonic and the Secret Rings. And the first enemy from this game is Green Majin. Green Majin is the smallest of the Jin enemies in the game. They will most often be seen sitting still, but sometimes they can do a spin attack. There's also the Blue Majin, who is the medium-sized version of the Jin. They have the exact same attack pattern as the Green Majin. And lastly, we have the Red Majin, who is the largest of the Jin enemies and has the same attack pattern. Being the largest of the group, they also take 2 hits to the feet instead of 1 like the Green and Blue. Rafflesia Jin. These are flowers inhabited by spirits that attack by spitting seed-like bombs at the player. Sonic can homing attack the bombs in the air in order to destroy the bombs, and he can attack the flower in order to hurt it. It takes 3 total hits to defeat the plant, and they can defend themselves by folding their petals and deflecting attacks. Golem Jin. Golem Jins are large mechanical creatures possessed by spirits. Some of them are found holding explosive barrels that they can throw at Sonic to attack. The Golem's weak spot is their head, which requires 1 homing attack to defeat. Once they are defeated, they will fall over, and their bodies can be used as grinding rails for Sonic. Gargoyle Jin. Gargoyle Jins are much like gargoyles from folklore, disguising themselves as statues. They have a very large moveset in the game, being able to send out shockwaves, dive at Sonic, and guard themselves from attack with their wings. Slime Jin. Slime Jins are small slimed enemy creatures with carpet patterns. They can defend themselves by electrifying themselves and can attack by spitting slime at Sonic. Skeleton Jin. Skeleton Jins are skeletons with swords for arms. They attack by spinning in circles and holding their arms outward. They can also use their arms to cover up themselves and defend from incoming attacks. Following Sonic and the Secret Rings, we have enemies from Sonic Rush Adventure. And first is Nibbles. Nibbles are piranha badniks that jump out of the water when the player goes above them. This is very similar to that of the Chopper and the Masher from earlier. However, one big difference between the Chopper and Masher is that the Nibbles will jump in arcing patterns. Terra. Terras are pterodactyl badniks that fly back and forth and swoop down at the player to attack. They were first seen in Sonic Rush Adventures, but returned for the mobile release of Sonic Unleashed, which I didn't even know existed until making this video. Triceratank. Triceratanks are Triceratops badniks who act very similar to a lot of Rhino enemies. By that I mean they charge the player and can be defeated by almost any attack. Saizuko Gata Dump. Saizuko Gata Dump are humanoid robots that attack by shooting steam at the player. The steam shot by the badnik will not hurt the player, but rather push them back. Saisaka Gata Jet. These are humanoid robots with jetpacks. These little guys will float up and down in the air using their little jetpacks. Saizuko Gata Spanner. These are humanoid robots that walk around carrying a wrench. These robots attack by spinning the top part of their body around in a circle. Barrier Angler. Barrier Anglers are fish enemies that swim in the water until the player gets near. When the player gets near, they will charge the ball on their head to create a defensive barrier protecting them from attacks. As you would suspect, the charged barrier will deal damage if Sonic runs into it. Aleki Angler. Aleki Anglers are palette swaps of the Barrier Angler. Unlike their relative though, when they charge with the barrier, they will not simply sit there. They will launch their barrier as a means of attack. Dive Bat. Dive Bots are flying badnik bats that swoop to attack the player. Though the enemy looks like they have a little gun on the bottom, that is actually just a nub that does absolutely nothing. Rapid Crab. Rapid Crab is a 17th unique badnik crab robot. They're only seen in Sonic Rush Adventure, and in this game if they spot the player, they will swing their claw in the air for a short period of time. If the player touches the claw while it's being swung, then they will be damaged. Bomb Ghosts. Bomb Ghosts are robots covered in a sheet that have the ability to turn invisible. Honestly, I don't know if the sheet plays any role in this ability, but they do have the sheet. They attack by throwing bombs at the player that explode on contact or a few seconds after landing on the ground. Kaizoku Skeleton. Kaizoku Skeletons are ghost skeleton badniks that have no legs and hover in the air. Similar to the Bomb Ghosts, they attack by throwing bombs at the player that explode on contact or after a few seconds on the ground. Skullfire. Skullfires are exactly what they sound like. They are floating skull robots that are on fire. On contact, they will not hurt the player, but rather attach themselves to them and drain their rings. Despite being on fire, they can be killed with any attack without taking damage. Kaizoku Gun. Kaizoku Gun are humanoid robots armed with cannons. Their only means of attack is by firing the cannon in a straight line at Sonic. Kaizoku Sword. Kaizoku Swords are humanoid robots armed with a small sword. Though the sword is short, it has a long range that one would not expect with its extremely large hitbox. Sky Moon. Sky Moons are enemies that simply float in the air. They come in 2 colors, red and yellow, and both act a bit differently. The yellow ones have no means of attack at all, while the red ones can fire an energy beam at Sonic. Crystal Head. Crystal Heads are snowflake robots that sit stationary. When Sonic is near, they will start to glow white and then spin to attack. While spinning, they are immune to Sonic's attacks and will damage him if they hit him. Kaizoku Glider. Kaizoku Glider are hang gliding humanoid robots. They don't do anything except glide forward. Kaizoku Snowball. Kaizoku Snowballs are tiny robots that hide inside of snowballs. They will sometimes hop out of their hiding spots and try and shoot Sonic in order to hurt him. If the snowball is hiding and is hit with an attack, it will be destroyed, leaving the tiny robot walking around. Kaizoku Hover Bomb. Kaizoku Hover Bombs are humanoid robots that hover in the air. They attack by throwing bombs at the player that they seemingly have an endless supply of. Kaizoku Hover Gunner. Kaizoku Hover Gunners are very similar to the Kaizoku Hover Bomb, but instead of throwing bombs, they fire a gun. Yep, it's that simple. Kaizoku Bomb. Kaizoku Bombs are humanoid robots that wander back and forth and attack by throwing explosive barrels at the player, which is confusing considering their name literally has bomb in it, but they use explosive barrels. Kaizoku Hogan. Kaizoku Hogan are large robots that wield a ball and chain as their weapon of choice. They attack by swinging their ball and chain at Sonic. Unlike most enemies in the Sonic franchise that take 1 hit to defeat, these bulky boys take 3 to defeat. Our next game up for enemies is Sonic Rivals 2, and our first enemy is Bombat. Bombats are a bad enemy that simply float in the air and do not attack. However, if they are destroyed, they will break into bombs that will explode upon hitting the ground. So it's best to just leave them alone, as they won't hurt you if you do. And the only other new enemy in Sonic Rivals 2 is Gardon. Gardon is a crab that is really similar to the enemy Crawl. They move and act almost exactly the same as a Crawl, but the main difference between these enemies is that the Gardon can be jumped on. Oh yeah, and this is the 18th unique crab enemy. Sonic Chronicles is another game from the Dark Ages of Sonic that people wish to forget, but this one is a turn-based RPG, so it has a ton of enemies that I have to go over. I'll go over them fairly quickly because enemies in turn-based combat tend to just attack. First, we have the Assault Drone, and the Assault Drones are pretty simply just hovering drones equipped with Gatling guns. There's also the Assault Drone Mach 2, which is a stronger version of the original. Bomb Pawn. Despite its name, Bomb Pawn is not part of the Egg Pawn series of robots. Instead, it's just a random humanoid robot that attacks by shooting bombs. Colossal Worm. Though Colossal Worms look like they are robots, they are actually completely organic. Like most other worm enemies, they simply pop out of the ground and slam their bodies in order to attack. Dominated Voxai Citizens. These are the citizens of the Voxai colony that have been mind controlled. They have psychic powers that they use to create a ring of energy and attack. Voxai Conspirators. These are the bigger and stronger version of the dominated Voxai citizens. Dragodon. Oh my god, no, not the boss from Captain Toad, the enemy from Sonic Chronicles. Dragodons are giant water lizards. Their main attack is swinging their spiky tail. Enraged Armadillo. Enraged Armadillo is an armadillo enemy that is, well, enraged. It attacks by ramming into the player. Giant Millipede. Giant Millipedes are oversized millipedes that attack by spitting blue goo or rolling at Sonic. Giant Scorpion. Much like every enemy we've just gone over, Giant Scorpion is another enemy only seen in Sonic Chronicles The Dark Brotherhood. They attack by either pinching the player or firing an energy blast from their tail. Gizoid. These are short humanoid robots that are the weakest and most basic form of the Gizoid line of robots. They attack with energy blades and can copy any ability. Gizoid Centurion. This is simply the stronger version of the Gizoid. Gizoid Mark II. This is an even stronger version of the Gizoid. Gizoid Guardian. Gizoid Guardians are a larger version of the Gizoid with a wheel instead of legs. They wield a spear as their primary weapon. These enemies are only seen in the boss fight with Imperator the Ninth. Guardian Pawn. Guardian Pawns are another misnamed enemy as they are named Pawn, but they are not part of the Egg Pawn line of robots. These are large humanoid robots that fire energy projectiles to attack. They also have the ability to charge a super shot that does massive damage. The stronger version of these is the Guardian Pawn Mach 2. I know, really creative name. Gun Pawn. Again, not an actual egg pawn, but just called Gun Pawn. Gun Pawns are large humanoid robots that attack by launching missiles. The stronger version of these is the Gun Pawn Mark II. I know, really creative names. But for marketing purposes, I understand why you want it to be the Mark II. Kron Warrior. Kron Warriors are large aliens that are part of the Kron colony. They have the highest armor stat of any enemy in the game and require armor-piercing moves in order to defeat. Laser Drone. Laser drones are weak robots that attack by either shooting a laser or using the buzzsaw on them to attack. The stronger version of these is the Laser Drone Mark II, obviously. Marauder Scout. Marauder Scouts are echidna soldiers suited up for battle. They attack with blue energy blades that they have attached to their wrists. There are two stronger versions of this. The first is the Marauder Vet Scout, and even stronger than that is the Nocturnus Velite. Nocturne Equities. Nocturne Equities are echidna soldiers that have a pair of wings and attack with their energy blades. They have a vampiric-like ability to drain HP and restore their own. The stronger version of these is the Nocturne Decurion. Nocturne Hostatus. Nocturne Hostatus are more echidna soldiers. These ones attack by throwing energy spears at the player. They have two stronger versions. The first is the Nocturne Princep, and the strongest is the Nocturne Triarius. Continuing with the non-stop echidna enemies in this game, we have Nocturne Praetorian. Nocturne Praetorians are echidnas that attack by shooting energy blasts from their hand cannons. And finally, to finish off the echidna enemies from this game, we have Nocturne High Praetorian. They're exactly like the regular ones with slightly different stats. They're not even necessarily better stats. They're just kind of different. Nurgle Drone. Nurgle drones are slug-like creatures that attack by jumping at the player to engulf them in their gooey bodies. This attack is vampiric as it both does damage and heals the drone. Nurgle Warrior. These are larger Nurgle creatures that are made up of many Nurgle drones. Though they are slightly bigger and of a slightly slightly different look, they're essentially just stronger variations of the drone. Power Pylon. Power Pylons are enemies only seen during the boss fight with Imperior the Ninth, and only during the phase where he's on his throne. While they do not attack themselves, if not destroyed in battle, they will heal the throne for 160 HP each turn. Wasp Swarm. Wasp Swarms are wasp enemies that are usually found in groups, which are known as swarms. As one might suspect a wasp to do, these attack by stinging. Queen Wasp. Queen Wasp is a large, oversized wasp. Just like the wasp swarm, and as everyone would suspect, they attack by stinging. Raptor Hawk. Raptor Hawks are large bird enemies. They attack by scratching the player with their talons. Robodillo. Robodillos are robot armadillos with spiked spines. Once they are defeated, they have the ability to repair themselves and rejoin the battle. To avoid this, the player must simply defeat all enemies before they can fix themselves. Sentry Drone. Sentry drones are small robots that float in the air with a propeller and attack by firing a laser. The stronger version of these is the Sentry Mark II. Seeker Drone. The Seeker Drone is a rocket-equipped version of the Sentry Drone. Shield Pawn. Again, terrible name, as they're not part of the Egg Pawn series. These are large robots that attack by punching, and also have a special ability to cause earthquakes. Stronger version of these is the Shield Pawn Mark II. SWAT Bot. SWAT bots are heavily armed robots that can repair themselves if destroyed in battle. They have a stronger form with a very creative name, SWAT Bot Mark II. Wild Boar. Wild boars are exactly what their name says, a wild boar. They attack by using their tusk and have a parry move which can auto counter an attack used on them. Zoa Brute. Zoa Brutes are large humanoid creatures that attack with their large crystalline arms. Alright, and finally, we are out of Sonic Dark Chronicles and on to Sonic Unleashed, another game from the Dark Age of Sonic. But at least it's more of a traditional Sonic game with more traditional Sonic enemies. First is Arrow Cannon. Arrow Cannon are well-endowed robots that have very large guns. They use their large guns to quickly and accurately shoot at Sonic. After shooting, they are vulnerable to attacks. Aren't we all? These enemies are first seen in Sonic Unleashed, but return in Sonic Generations. Gold Arrow Cannon. Gold Arrow Cannons are upgraded versions of the Arrow Cannon that will teleport away after shooting to make them harder to kill. Egg Fighter. Egg Fighters are humanoid robots that are part of the Egg Pawn series of robots. The Sonic Wiki actually says specifically that these are the Egg Pawn's cousins, but I don't really know what that means in terms of robot models. The Egg Fighter is the most common enemy in all of Sonic Unleashed. They return in Sonic Generations, where for some reason they strike a pose before attacking. Egg Fighter Shield. These are Egg Fighters that have a shield that he used to defend themselves. To attack, they will swing at Sonic with their free hands. To get past the shield, Sonic must either attack from behind or use his slide attack to hit the feet. Egg Fighter Spring Shield. This is pretty much the same as the Egg Fighter Shield, but on its shield it has a spring to send Sonic flying. Egg Fighter Shield Electric. Pretty much the same thing as the Egg Fighter Shield, but the shield has an electrical charge that will stun Sonic. Egg Fighter Sword. Egg Fighter Swords are Egg Fighters equipped with swords. That seems pretty self-explanatory now that I said it. They can do many attacks with the sword, including a jumping slash, a dash slash, and my personal favorite, standing on their heads and spinning in a circle. Egg Knight. Egg Knights are just Egg Fighters equipped with both a sword and a shield. Their main attack is jumping at Sonic and slashing. Egg Knight Spring Shield. This is the Egg Knight with a spring shield. And Egg Knight Electric Shield, who is the Egg Knight with an electric shield. Egg Shooter. Egg Shooters are a variant of the Egg Fighter with guns for arms. As they do have guns, they do attack by firing the guns at Sonic, but after a short period of time, they'll have to reload and will be vulnerable to attacks. Little Fighter. Little Fighters are the hands from defeated Egg Fighters. They will continue to fight on their own after an Egg Fighter is defeated. Dark Fright. Dark Fright is a minion of Dark Gaia. Dark Gaia is the main antagonist of Sonic Unleashed. These are some of the weakest minions of Dark Gaia in the game. They can easily be grabbed by Sonic in Werehog form and can be used as a weapon. These enemies return in Sonic Runners, where they simply carry gems and can be part of a combo. Red Fright. Red Frights are the stronger variation of the Dark Frights. Despite being the stronger version of a very weak enemy, they aren't very strong themselves. Killer Bee. Killer Bees are bee-like enemies that are part of Dark Gaia's minions. They are some of the fastest moving enemies in all of Sonic Unleashed and traveling groups. Because they are so fast, the easiest way to defeat them is to throw things at them rather than trying to approach them. Red Killer Bee. Red Killer Bees are even faster and harder hitting than the regular Killer Bee. As they are faster and harder hitting, they're obviously more dangerous. Little Rex. Little Rex are dinosaur-like creatures that are part of Dark Gaia's minions. These little guys travel around in packs and will attack by trying to swarm the player. Red Rex. Just like all the other red enemies up to this point, this is the stronger version of the Little Rex. Again, though they are technically stronger, they're still very weak. Nightmare. Nightmares are also part of Dark Gaia's minions, and they seem to be bipedal lizards. These enemies will attack by stretching out their arms and doing flips. They have the ability to both block Sonic's attack and dodge them. This can make them extremely tricky to defeat at times. They also have the ability to disappear in a puff of smoke or travel in black puddles on the ground. These things are really a pain in the butt. Red Nightmare is the stronger and more aggressive version of the standard Nightmare. Deep Nightmare. Deep Nightmare is the third variation of Nightmare, and they're even stronger and more aggressive than the Red Nightmare. And we have Red Deep Nightmare, which is even stronger and more aggressive than Deep Nightmare. Spike. Spikes are enemies whose names are definitely a misnomer, as they aren't spiky at all. Instead, they are round creatures with an eye that can self-destruct. Sonic can pick them up and use them as bombs to break down barriers and attack enemies. This is one of the few enemies who are part of Dark Gaia's minions, but don't have a stronger red version. Egg Launcher V. Egg Launcher V are orange robots armed with missiles on their back. They will hover around in the air and launch their homing missiles to attack. Egg Launcher H. These are just like the Egg Launcher V version, but the missiles are on the front instead of on their back, though the missiles still have the ability to home in on Sonic. Egg Launcher H plus V. This is the combination of both of the robots we just went over. It has missiles on both its front and its back. Dark Bat. Dark Bat are the flying minions of Dark Gaia. Sonic can grab onto them as a form of transportation to get along large bottomless pits. Dark Bat Sniper. Dark Bat Snipers are the stronger version of the Dark Bat that have the ability to shoot energy balls to attack. Thunder Bat. Thunder Bats are the electric variant of the Dark Bat. They have the ability to electrocute themselves, which will hit the player if they try to attack him. In the Wii version of Sonic Unleashed, they can also attack by shooting electric projectiles. Egg Chaser. Egg Chaser, also known as Arrow Chasers, are flying robots that fire lasers to attack. They are mostly seen in auto-running and grinding sections where they will stay ahead of the player. This enemy first appeared in Sonic Unleashed and then returned in Sonic Colors, where it got a totally new design, making it much more cartoonish. Dark Master. Dark Masters are minions of Dark Gaia that have a wizard-like appearance. They have the ability to float above the ground, and in combat they will try and hit Sonic with their staff. They will also attempt to dodge Sonic's attacks by teleporting a short distance. Fright Master. Fright Masters are Dark Masters that have the ability to summon Dark Frights into battle. Cure Master. Cure Master is a variation of the Dark Master that has the ability to cure nearby allies. Well, its allies, not your allies. Power Master. Power Masters are a variation of the Dark Master that have the ability to buff nearby allies. When they do so, it will buff them both offensively and defensively. Fire Masters. Fire Masters are the variation of the Dark Master with fire attacks. They can shoot fireballs, and they will set Sonic on fire if they hit him with a staff. They can also use their fire defensively to engulf themselves in flames and make them invulnerable to attacks. Lightning Master. Lightning Masters are a version of the Dark Master that uses electric attacks. They actually have an extremely big weakness, which is water. So if you throw water on them, they will short circuit and die. Egg Flame. Egg Flames are small robots that spit flames to attack. Sonic has the ability to pick them up and use them as a flamethrower to both attack enemies or melt ice pillars. Egg Blizzard. Egg Blizzard are nearly identical to the Egg Flame, but they shoot out ice instead of flame. Again, Sonic can use it as a weapon to freeze enemies. Egg Typhoon. Egg Typhoons are normal fan robots that just blow air that isn't hot or cold. They're often found near pits because they will try and blow Sonic into them to defeat him. Evil Flower. Evil Flowers are stationary enemies that attack by shooting energy blast at Sonic. These are normal flowers that have been mutated by the energy of Dark Gaia. Mole Cannon. Though when you hear the name Mole Cannon, you would assume it's a mole, as Sonic enemies are usually animals. But no, this is just a cannon. Whenever Sonic gets near the Mole Cannon, it will hide in the ground and not come back up until he is further away. Egg Shackle. Egg Shackles are a small spiked tick-like enemy with a huge grin. Honestly, they're a little creepy. They are very small and very quick. They have the ability to latch on to Sonic, and when doing so will drain his rings and prevent him from jumping higher. To knock them off, Sonic must use either the Stomp attack or the Foot Sweep. Egg Burst. Egg Burst are a variation of the Egg Shackle that are explosive. Much like their relative, the Egg Shackle, they will grab onto Sonic, but after a short period, they will explode. Thunderball. Thunderballs are enemies covered in spikes that will slowly follow Sonic around, trying to electrocute him. Sonic can stun them, pick them up, and throw them into a pool of water in order to electrocute all the enemies in the water. Big Mother. Big Mother are large Dark Gaia's minions. They have the ability to spawn both little and red Rexes. Besides spawning Rexes, Big Mothers also have their own attacks. That includes slamming the ground to create a shockwave and spinning their arms. All of the Big Mother's attacks will stun if they hit Sonic, which can be counteracted by spamming the jump button. Dark Eel. Dark Eels are minions of Gaia's that pop out of the ground similar to worms. They have the two classic worm attacks, slamming their body and spitting energy projectiles. Interceptor. Interceptors are robots only seen in auto-running sections. They can attack in many different ways, which require different ways to avoid, such as a shockwave that requires a jump or a laser that requires a sidestep. Titan. Titans are some of the largest and scariest minions of Dark Gaia's brood. Though they move extremely slow, they hit extremely hard and are extremely tanky. They can attack at range by sending out a shockwave, or when Sonic is in melee range, they will swing their arms. Continuing down the Sonic Dark Ages, we have Sonic in the Black Knight. And yes, that was an entire intended pun. The first enemy we have here is the Soldier Ones. These are soldier knights that have a variety of weapons. They can be armed with either an axe, crossbow, spear, or sword. Are these 4 different enemies, or are these 1 enemy? I'll be honest, when talking about this game, I don't really care, so they're just 1 enemy. Crawling One. Crawling Ones are a variation of the Soldier Ones that have claws on their hands. They use these claws to climb up walls and onto ceilings. Giant One. These are larger and bulkier versions of the Soldier One. They attack by swinging their axe or grabbing onto the player. To escape their grip, the player must shake their Wii remote quickly, which is super fun. Everyone loves motion controls. Eyeball One. Eyeball Ones are weird, slimy, serpentine creatures in armor with 1 large eye. They attack by shooting energy beams at Sonic 2 at a time. Fish One. Fish Ones are the final enemies from Sonic and the Black Knight. They fly in the air and fire projectiles. Depending on the color of the Fish One, the projectiles will change. The red shoot an energy beam, the purple shoot a bomb, the blue shoot ice, the yellow shoot electricity, and the white ones shoot energy spheres. Returning to a more traditional Sonic game, we have Sonic Colors. And the first enemy there is Mole. Moles are yet another version of the Burrow Bot. They're only seen in the digging sections of Sonic Colors and come in 2 colors, pink and blue. Sprinkler. Sprinklers are indestructible enemies that can be stunned by attacks but not destroyed. They will follow Sonic from above and drop things on him. Sometimes they will drop rings, but much more likely they will drop spiked balls or bombs. Big Chasers. Big Chasers are the 19th crab enemy. Specifically, they are hermit crab robots that chase Sonic through sections of the game. They are completely invulnerable to all of Sonic's attacks. The Big Chasers themselves will try and attack Sonic by shooting lasers or trying to punch him. The easiest way to avoid the lasers is by using the sidestep. Up next we have Sonic Generations, which is one of the best Sonic games of all time. The game mostly uses enemies from other Sonic games, but it has 2 unique ones. The first one is Giant Chopper. Giant Chopper, as you would suspect, is an oversized giant chopper badnik. They are used in 2 different ways throughout the game. The first way is that it chases the player throughout grinding sections in green hills. And the other way is as an automatic kill if Sonic goes below the buoys in the water. The Giant Chopper can even kill Super Sonic, who is usually invincible. The other new enemy from Sonic Generations is Missile Egg Robo. As their name would imply, they're a variation of the Egg Robo. The name also implies that they launch missiles, which they do from the top of their head. They are first seen in Sonic Generations and return in Sonic Frontiers. Our next game of brand new enemies is Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2. And the first enemy is the Full Boar. Full Boars are Warthog badniks that come in 3 colors, red, yellow, and white. Yellow and white will simply move back and forth, but the red ones will attempt to charge at the player. You see, red means anger, so you know they're gonna charge. Zoomer. Zoomers are bird badniks specifically based on the Kingfisher. They sit above the water and will dive down when the player gets near to attack. Snowy. Snowies are large polar bear badniks that clap their hands together to attack. While most enemies in Sonic the Hedgehog Episode 2 take 1 attack to destroy, these take 3. Steel Lion. Steel Lions are sea lion badniks. They are found in underwater sections and attack by breathing out cold air that will freeze the water in front of them. While the air does freeze the water, it also hurts Sonic if he touches it. Sandworm. This is yet another Sonic enemy that simply goes by the name Sandworm. The enemy is only seen in Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2 and has a very similar look to the Caterkiller, but it is much larger. These guys will jump out of the sand in order to attack Sonic and are completely indestructible. Not even their heads are vulnerable. Flamers. Yes, this enemy is really named the Flamer. Flamers are a variation of the Orbinaut enemy. They have 4 flamethrowers that rotate around their body and spew flames as they do so. Like most Orbinaut enemies, the only way to defeat them is to hit their main body. Scarabesk. Scarabesk are dung beetle badniks that are found usually hanging off of cliffs. They attack by pushing spherical bombs off of ledges at Sonic. Alright, on to the next game with new enemies, and that is Sonic Dash. Drones. These drones specifically are seen in the Sonic the Hedgehog movies and Knuckles TV show. In a crossover event with the movie, the game Sonic Dash had auto-running sections that featured these drones. Egg Forcer. Egg Forcers are robots only seen in Sonic Dash and in the Roblox game Sonic Prime Dash. In both of these games, they are simply stationary enemies that do not attack and have a set health. Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Clyde. Now you might be thinking, these are not Sonic enemies, but they actually are. These ghosts are originally from the Pac-Man series, but serve as enemies in Sonic Dash. They're only seen when you play as either Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man, where they replace the normal enemies in the game. Much like in the Pac-Man games, when you grab a power pellet, the ghost will turn blue and can be defeated simply by running into them. Moving on from Sonic Dash, we now have Sonic Lost World. And the first enemy we have here is Sheep. And these sheeps aren't robot sheep, they're real sheeps. In the game, there are 2 variations of the sheep. The first is the peaceful sheep, who simply stands there and will allow Sonic to bounce off of them. As they are bounced off of, they will lose their wool. The second type of sheep is not so peaceful. These ones will turn red when they see Sonic and charge at him. However, they are harmless, as they will only push Sonic backwards when they make contact. Big Nowl. Big Nowls are oversized caterpillars that are pink instead of purple. And you can tell they're intended to be females because they have great eyelashes. They burrow into the ground and pop out to attack. These enemies are very tanky and take multiple hits to defeat. Cactus Ball. Cactus balls are sentient, oversized cactus. They come in two different sizes, big and small. The big ones will roll around on the ground, acting like obstacles, while the small ones will bounce around. Both are completely indestructible and cannot be destroyed. Galagabee. Galagabees are enemies found in Sonic Lost World and Sonic Forces. Now, this is not their official name, but rather the one found in the code for the game. It is extremely entertaining that within the code, they are called Galagabees. The Galagabees move in large swarms one after another. They can often be chain attacked to get across large gaps. Antlion. Antlions are badniks based on antlions. They are only found in digging sections and sliding sections in Sonic Lost World. If Sonic attacks their head, they will be destroyed, but if Sonic attacks their bodies will act as bumpers, pushing Sonic backward. Antlion Mother. Antlion mothers are oversized antlions that will block paths in digging sections with lasers shooting out of both sides of their body. They will pop their head out of one of 3 holes, and destroying the head will destroy the lasers. However, it will leave the large body behind. And obviously, because this is a female enemy, it has large, stylish eyebrows. Sandworm. Yet another enemy just named Sandworm. These are large worms that pop out of the sand in Sonic Lost World and Sonic Forces. Their main attack is to spit acid balls at Sonic. Blowfish Transporter. Blowfish Transporters are badniks seen in Sonic Lost World. They serve many different purposes throughout the game. Some will drop parachuting egg ponds, others swim in water releasing jaws, and one even lets you ride inside of it during gameplay. BFB. BFBs are larger versions of the Blowfish Transporters. They serve as mini bosses in Sonic Lost World for the Wii U, but in the 3DS version of the game, they serve as standard enemies. They attack by slamming the ground to cause shockwaves or firing homing missiles. Mambo. Mambos are some fish badniks. These fish robots are found underwater and swim in a straight line with mines following behind them. Utsubo. Utsubos are giant moray badniks. They are only ever seen in Sonic Lost World, specifically in Tropical Coast 3 during the rail grinding section. In this section, they will pop up and destroy parts of the rails as Sonic is grinding towards them. Because the rails are destroyed, this will force Sonic to switch to a different rail. Missile Crab Meat. Missile Crab Meats, also known as Missile Gani Gani, are a version of the crab meat that launch missiles from their claws rather than energy projectiles. They are only seen in Sonic Lost World, and I'm pretty sure that this is the 20th different crab enemy. Though, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I just lost count at this point. Maybe there's too many crabs. Yeti. Yetis are white-furred creatures that come in both big and small sizes. They don't actively hurt Sonic, but act like bumpers that will bounce him backward. The smaller ones will stay asleep and not bother Sonic, but the large ones will get angry and chase after him. Dung Beetle. Dung Beetles are beetle badniks that push blocks of ice, often containing rings or 1-ups. If Sonic does destroy the ice block, then the Dung Beetle will get mad and charge after him. Big Dragonfly. Big Dragonflies are oversized dragonfly robots that fly high above Sonic. They attack by firing pink lasers from their underbelly to the ground. Tarantula. Tarantulas are spider badniks that come in groups of 5 and hang from webs. Sonic must defeat all 5 of them to release 5 butterflies inside of them, which will go to a nearby flower and bloom it. Once the flower is bloomed, then Sonic can be moved to a new section. Hell Ball Hog. Hell Ball Hogs are a variation of the ball hog seen sleeping in the background. When Sonic gets near, they will try and jump to the foreground and land on Sonic's head. Gold Ball Hog. Gold Ball Hogs act more like the standard ball hog from other games, releasing explosives from their stomach. However, unlike standard ball hogs, they take 3 hits to defeat. Laser Grabber. Laser Grabbers are a variation of the grabber that are found on ceilings. Rather than just trying to grab Sonic, they will also fire a laser down at the ground to attack. Gustav Turtle. Gustav Turtles are turtle badniks found in Sonic Lost World. Depending on which version of the game you are playing, they act differently. The ones in the Wii version of the game will shoot missiles that Sonic can knock back at the robot, where the ones in the 3DS version will shoot cannonballs and need to be hit 3 times to be defeated. Bone Bada Bada. Bone Bada Badas are bonefish that will jump out of the sand and try to attack Sonic. Baku Baku. Baku Bakus are strange fuzzy brown creatures found inside of bubbles. When Sonic jumps on these bubbles, he will release the Baku Baku, which will slowly chase him. They can be killed by any standard attack, or they can be killed by the spikes found in other bubbles. Cube. Cubes are Rubik's Cube based enemies. Pretty much the only thing separating them from Rubik's Cubes is their face. Sand Twister Orbinauts. Sand Twister Orbinauts are Orbinauts that create sand twisters around themselves. They come in 2 sizes, small and large, with the small ones obviously making smaller sand twisters and the large ones making larger sand twisters. Manta. Mantas are flying pink manta badniks. They are only seen in grinding sections and attack by dropping bombs onto Sonic. Shy Guy. Shy Guys are enemies from the Mario franchise. And if you're wondering what they're doing on a Sonic list, well, they're here because in Sonic Lost World, there is a Yoshi's Island crossover. And in this crossover, Shy Guys are seen. Along with the Shy Guys, we also see Piranha Plant, yet another enemy from the Mario franchise. In fact, if you like Mario enemies, I have a whole video covering every single Mario enemy. Go check it out. Stallchild. Stallchilds are skeleton enemies from The Legend of Zelda. This is yet another crossover in Sonic the Lost World. Along with the Stallchild, we also see the Deku Scrub from Legend of Zelda and Keese, which which are bad enemies. While doing research, I also saw on the Sonic Wiki that in Sonic Lost World, there's an enemy known as the Underground Maui, but I couldn't find it anywhere else on the internet, and there's no link to a picture of it, so I'm not sure what this enemy actually is. But I also haven't played Sonic in the Lost World yet, so if someone in the comments could link me to a picture of this enemy, I would be very grateful. That's the end of the enemies for Sonic Lost World. Next, we have Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal. If you don't know, Sonic Boom is a Netflix series featuring the Sonic characters where they look like this. Yes, they're terrifying and weird. This is a crossover game with that series. The first enemy from that series is the Armorillo. These are robots that hover in the air and will shoot at Sonic after aiming for a few seconds. Like many other flying enemies, they are often found over gaps in a row so that you can do chain attacks to get over that pit. Buzzsaw. Buzzsaws are enemies that will move idly back and forth until they see Sonic. Once they do, they will rev up their engines and then charge at him. Scuttle. Scuttles are spider-like robots that are only seen in Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal. Their attack pattern is pretty much the exact same as the Buzzsaw from the same game, moving idly back and forth and then charging at Sonic when he gets near. Spin Trap. Spin Traps are fish-like enemies that hop out of the water and then fall back down. Very similar to Choppers and Mashers from other Sonic games. However, unlike Choppers and Mashers, when these try to bite at Sonic, they will slow down. Stinger. Stingers are abstract bee creatures that float in the air. They can attack by firing either lasers or missiles at Sonic. Squall. Squalls are robots that are often found hanging from the ceilings and shooting lasers down to the ground. Because they consistently shoot the laser non-stop, you have to destroy these robots in order to get by. Rex. Rex are bipedal yellow robots that will shoot homing missiles to attack. When destroyed, they will drop a bomb that will explode after a few seconds. Zipper. Zippers are flying robots that will sit in one place in the air. When they see Sonic, they will quickly charge at the player and then return to their original position. Mortar. Mortars are robots that look like turrets. They move back and forth and fire at the player when they see them. Mortars have to reload in between shots, meaning this will be an opportunity to attack them. They take 2 total hits to defeat. Rocco. Roccos are enemies that hover in place and will fire 2 parallel shots to attack. Blunt Force. Blunt Force are yellow rhino robots only seen in Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal. Like other rhino robots, when they see the player, they will charge at them to attack. They take 2 hits to the feet, with the first one removing their armor. Cliffhanger. Cliffhangers are spider robots that hang from the ceiling and fire lasers downward to the ground to block paths. They serve an extremely similar purpose to the Skrull. Shocker. Shockers are robots that are seen in both the Sonic Boom games. In Sonic Crystals, they act the same as the Zippers. However, in Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, they will attack by firing 3 lasers at the player. When the player gets near them, they will also run away, making them tricky to defeat. Slimeco. Slimecos are faster moving versions of the Skrull. Zeppo. Zeppos are robots that will hide inside of lava and jump out to attack. At the apex of their jump, they will stop in midair and emit an electric attack. Alright, switching Sonic Boom games, we're now on the Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, where we have Parasite Snake. Parasite Snakes are weak robots that try to bite to attack. If these robots see a Commando Husk, which is basically the body of a destroyed robot, they will try to combine with it in order to become a more dangerous enemy. Driller Snake. Driller Snakes are the stronger version of the Parasite Snake. Unlike the Parasite Snakes though, they cannot revive Commando Husk, and instead will burrow underground and pop out to attack. Swordsman Trooper. Swordsman Troopers are humanoid enemies wielding legally distinct lightsabers. They are the most common enemy in Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. They attack by swinging their sword and can dodge attacks by moving to the side. They come in 2 forms, standard ones that are orange weaklings and white ones that move quicker and can absorb more damage. Gunslinger Trooper. These are a variation of the Trooper with guns for hands. This allows them to attack from long range. Just like the Sword Trooper, they come in the orange and white form. Gunslinger Guard. Gunslinger Guards are the stronger version of the Gunslinger Trooper that are armed with a shield. Blast Trooper. Blast Troopers are yellow versions of the Trooper enemy that attack by shooting bombs at the player. As the player approaches, they will consistently step backward in order to try and get away. They come in a stronger version that is white and throws 3 bombs at a time. Blaster Guards. These are the stronger version of the Blast Trooper that are armed with the shields and are faster. Swordsman Guard. These are the stronger version of the Swordsman Trooper that are armed with a shield. Bomber Elite. Bomber Elites are strong, tanky robots that take many attacks to defeat. The main ways they attack Sonic are by either shooting a burst of bombs at the player or shooting bombs into the air that will rain down onto the player. Gatling Elite. Very similar to the Bomber Elite, but with a Gatling gun hand. They will defend themselves by putting mines down around them and attack by shooting energy beams rapidly from their armed cannon. Charger. Chargers are robots with spiked heads. They will attempt to use that spike to charge at Sonic and headbutt him. Charger Dart. These are a smaller variation of the Charger that are smaller and more agile. To attack, they will first run away and then jump into the air trying to dive bomb headfirst onto Sonic. After doing so, if they miss, they will get stuck in the ground, which makes them easy to defeat. Minions. Minions are the beloved yellow creatures from the Despicable Me movie franchise. They are often seen in unfunny memes on Facebook that your mom shares. Wait, it's not those minions? Oh, it's a different minion. These guys are little humanoid robots found in Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. These are completely harmless robots who will run or fly away from Sonic. Crusher Brute. Crusher Brutes are large robots that have a mace for their right hand. They attack by either swinging their mace around or slamming it on the ground to create shockwaves. Furnace Brute. Furnace Brutes are large fire versions of the Crusher Brute. They attack by either creating walls of fire or swinging their mace hand around. The enemy is very tanky and has a ton of health. Fridge Brute. Fridge Brutes are the cold variation of the Furnace Brutes. They attack by shooting ice beams that will create ice patches that will freeze Sonic. And just like other brutes, they can swing around their mace hand to also attack. Roller Recoiler. Roller Recoiler are eyeball robots that's main attack is doing a spin dash like attack at Sonic. Roller Bouncers. These are a green version of the Roller Recoiler, which will bounce 7 times when they do their attack. Roller Shocker. These are the exact same as the Roller Recoil, but they will electrocute Sonic if he touches them. Ring Thief. Ring Thieves are hovering robots that stay out of the range of Sonic. When rings are near, whether uncollected in the stage or from when a player takes damage, Ring Thief will try to suck them up so the player can't get them. Swarmer. Swarmers are robots launched from Swarmer hives. They actually act more like projectiles rather than standard enemies. They are launched 6 at a time and home in on the player. Alright, on to the third and final Sonic Boom game, Sonic Boom Fire and Ice. And first we have Tortoise Robot. Tortoise robots are slow moving robots that move back and forth. When they see Sonic, they will charge them to attack, but because they are turtles, they move extremely slow. Hovering Robot. As this robot's not so real name implies, these guys hover in the air. They attack by shooting projectiles at Sonic when they see him. Bug Robot. Now I know this is called the Bug Robot and it is listed as the Bug Robot, but honestly, it looks like a frog with wings to me. Tell me if I'm wrong. They attack by firing homing missiles consistently at the player. Ostrich Robots. Ostrich Robots are robots that will stand still and launch homing missiles to attack, sort of like the Bug Robot. Rat Robot. These are rat robots that walk on ceilings and fire lasers downward to attack. Seagull Robot. These are robots that will fly around in the air and when they see the player will charge diagonally down towards them. Eel Robot. These robots are blue electrical eels that hop out of holes in the ground. They are found in groups of either 2 or 3 with their holes being very close to each other. Snail Robot. These are robot snails that are only seen on walls and ceilings. They are never found on the floor. When they see the player, they will fire a white pillar of energy that damages Sonic. And to round out the Sonic Boom Fire and Ice enemies, we have Lizard Robot. These are lizard enemies that will roll into a ball in order to attack the player. Honestly, if you're gonna have an enemy that rolls into a ball, why not just use an armadillo? Now that we have escaped the black hole that is the Sonic Boom games, we can move on to an actual good Sonic game, Sonic Mania. And the first enemy we have here is Canister. Canister is a snail badnik with a film reel for a shell. They are found on walls and ceilings and attack by shooting film stock at the player. Mic Drop. Mic Drops are badniks based on drop-down mics that were famously used in old school boxing matches. They hang from the ceiling by their cables and drop down to try and attack. A few seconds after dropping down, they will start swinging back and forth. Shutterbug. Shutterbugs are badniks that are a combination of a fly and a camera. And honestly, their name is extremely clever. They fly around in patterns very similar to the Wisp from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. However, unlike Wisp, they will take pictures of the player. Tubonaut. Tubonauts are a variation of the Orbinaut that are seen only in Sonic Mania. They attack and defend themselves by quickly spinning their orbs in order to create a barrier. Unlike most Orbinaut enemies, the orbs floating around them can be destroyed. Once one is destroyed, when they do the barrier move, it will no longer hurt the player, but rather bounce them back. When 2 are destroyed, the barrier does nothing, and when all 3 are destroyed, they are just floating heads. Zombie Orbinaut. Zombie Orbinauts are variations of the Orbinaut enemy only seen in the Big Squeeze boss fight. During the fight with this claw machine boss, they will reanimate these guys from broken parts and other robots. Their main body comes from broken Tubonauts, and the items floating around them seem to be from Rattle Killers. Ice Bomba. Ice Bomba are variations of the Bomb Bearer. They drop containers just like their standard counterpart. However, if these containers are touched, they will freeze Sonic. When the container hits the ground, it will also create a large ice pillar that will block Sonic's path and can be destroyed by a jump attack. Juggle Saw. Juggle Saws are their 21st crab enemies. These crabs are always found in pairs, with one on the ceiling and the other being on the floor. Between the 2 of them, they will have one saw blade that they will toss back and forth. If only one of the Juggle Saws is destroyed, then the other will juggle the blade by himself. Splats. Splats are rabid badniks that were originally intended to be in the first Sonic the Hedgehog game. Though they didn't make the final cut of the original game, they would later appear in the 2013 remaster of the original Sonic the Hedgehog. They would then return for both Sonic Mania and Sonic Superstars. They move by hopping around in straight lines at Sonic. In Sonic Mania, they spawn from large bottles of ink and leave trails of ink as they hop. Woodrow. Woodrows are woodpecker-based badniks. These birds are found hanging stationary from tree trunks. As Sonic gets near the trees, they will peck the tree rapidly to shake it, which will drop bombs downward. Mecha Sonic. Now, throughout Sonic's history, there's actually been a bunch of things called called Mecha Sonic. One is a boss in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the 8-bit version for the Game Gear, and this is that version, but in that game it's a boss, and it's actually a normal enemy in Sonic Mania. These robots are released by Metal Sonic during his boss fights, and act like normal enemies. Metal Sonic will spawn them frequently, and they only take one hit to defeat. Jelly Knights. Jelly Knights, also known as Jellies, are jellyfish badniks that first appeared in the 2013 remaster of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and then returned in Sonic Mania. The Jellies are found floating in water and have a similar attack pattern to that of the Grabber, which is they will try and drop down from above and grab the player. Just like the Grabber, after a few seconds they will self-destruct to hurt the player. Armadilloid. Armadilloids are an armadillo variation of the Turtleoid enemy from earlier. Their attack pattern is nearly identical to that of the Turtleoid. Also like the Turtleoid, the large ones are indestructible, while the ones sitting on top that are much smaller are destroyable. I guess destructible is the word, but I said destroyable and you're dealing with it. Bumpalo. Bumpalos are buffalo badniks with bumpers on their back, hence the name Bumpalo. The bumper on their back will thwart any attacks from above, meaning you must use a spin dash to defeat them. Cactula. Cactulas are variations of the Nebula that look a lot like cactus. Other than that, they act exactly identical to Nebulas. Rattle Killer. Rattle Killers are a variation of the Caterpillar that are larger, longer, and green. They're seen climbing up and down totems and extend their body out to attack like Crawltons. Roller Mark II. Obviously, this is the newer version of the roller from the original Sonic the Hedgehog game, but honestly, it's just weaker. Kind of a downgrade in my opinion. They roll into a ball and attack just like they did in the original Sonic the Hedgehog. But unlike those rollers, if Sonic runs into them while using a spin attack, they will just bounce off each other, as opposed to the old school ones which would have damaged you. Voltron. Voltrons are vulture badniks whose name is based on the old school cartoon Voltron, but they're spelled with a U, which is kind of clever. These birds will wait on cactus or ledges for the player to get near. Then they will dive bomb to try and attack. Amy Doll. Amy Dolls are robot versions of Amy Rose that are seen during one of the boss fights with Dr. Robotnik. The Amy Dolls will attack by attempting to hug Sonic and then self-destruct. Matryoshka Bomb. These are large bomb enemies that act similar to Matryoshka dolls or nesting dolls. They will release a smaller version of themselves, which in turn will release a smaller version of itself. After one is done releasing a smaller version of itself, it will light its fuse and then explode. Like many Sonic Bomb enemies, these cannot be destroyed and must simply be avoided. Flasher Mark II. Flasher Mark IIs are a variation of the Flasher. However, unlike its predecessor, it is not a Firefly. The ability they share with the original Flasher is that they will emit electricity around themselves that will hurt the player. While the original Flasher would be found flying, the Flasher Mark II can be found on walls and ceilings. Sentry Bug. Sentry Bugs are flying badnik insects that attack by releasing 6 drones that will surround the player and then explode to hurt them. In order to avoid the attack, Sonic must destroy the Sentry Bug or just get out of its range. Turbo Turtle. Turbo Turtles are turtle badniks armed with fans. They have a very similar look to that of the Turtleoid enemy from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. They have the ability to aim the fan either left, right, or up. If the fan is pushing left or right, it will prevent the player from running at the Turtleoid. If it is facing upward, the player can jump in the air and be pushed up. That was our very last Sonic Mania enemy, and next we have Sonic Forces enemies. And first we have Egg Walker. Egg Walkers are ostrich robots found in Sonic Forces. As the player gets near the Egg Walker, they will run away and release homing missiles as they do so. Egg Tank. Egg Tanks are badniks based on rhino beetles that are seen in Sonic Forces and Shadow Generations. They are often found in groups and will stand still launching large projectiles in a steady stream at the player. Though the projectiles can hurt the player, they can also be homing attacked to be destroyed. Missile Pod. Missile Pods are robots that are simply boxes that sit still on the ground and launch large missiles into the air that attack the player. As the missile box is completely immobile, it is easily destroyed by any attack. Death Egg Robot. Death Egg robots are oversized robots based on the final boss from Sonic the Hedgehog 2 of the same name. They generally can't be destroyed and must be avoided. They will try to block paths by doing things like destroying bridges and throwing debris to attack. More often than not, they are seen in the background as set pieces rather than enemies. Now, I'm not sure how many people actually know this. I'm sure a lot of Sonic fans do, but before researching this video, I didn't know this existed. Sonic Speed Simulator is a Sonic game that can be experienced for free on Roblox. I know, pretty weird. And they have their own unique enemies. The first is Fly Thorn. Though this enemy was first introduced in Sonic Speed Simulator, they also returned in Sonic Superstars. They act very similar to the Poindexter from earlier, as they will float in the air, extend spikes out, and then retract them, only dealing damage while their spikes are out and being completely vulnerable while their spikes are in. Security Drone. Security drones are robots that use propellers to simply float in the air and do not attack at all. They also have no defenses and can be destroyed by any attack. Super Buzz Bomber. Super Buzz Bombers are a variation of the Buzz Bomber only seen in Sonic Speed Simulator. They act like normal Buzz Bombers but have much higher health and are colored purple and black. Super Chopper. Much like the Super Buzzer, these are simply a different color and have more health. Super Burrowbot. A purple and black version of the Burrowbot with more health. Pixel Crab Meat. These are pretty much much the same as the standard crab meat, so I won't count them as their own unique crab, but they do have their own unique pixel design. Pixel Bat Brain. Again, the same as their base enemy, but with cool pixel design. Moving forward, we have enemies from Sonic Frontiers. And you know, if we're in Sonic Frontiers, we're reaching the end of this list because this is a recent game. First, we have Banger. Bangers are wheel-shaped robots. They charge quickly at Sonic and are extremely hard to dodge. Though hard to dodge, they are fairly weak and can be destroyed by a single attack. Bubble. Bubbles are enemies that are made up of a core and many spheres. Sonic must attack the spheres one by one in order to get to the core and destroy them for good. If Sonic takes damage while attacking the spheres, they will all regenerate unless the core was destroyed. Cyclones. Cyclones are dragon-like robots. They attack with small electrical tornadoes. They take a few hits to destroy, as you must first knock off their armor. Shell. Shells are defensive enemies that, when fully armored, cannot be damaged. Their main attack is throwing their shield at Sonic, which will return to them like a boomerang. When they throw the shield, this is when they are vulnerable to Sonic's attacks. Soldier. Soldiers are humanoid-like robots. They are one of the most common enemies in all of Sonic Frontiers. Their basic attack is slashing with their arms. As they are the most common enemy in the game, they are extremely easy to defeat and easy to avoid. Capture. Captures are robots that can't be hurt by normal means, so Sonic must simply avoid them, or else they will steal the Chaos Emerald from him and run away. As captures run away, they will leave a trail of energy that Sonic can jump on and grind to catch the capture. Once Sonic catches up to the capture, he can now defeat it with one of his stomp attacks. Hopper. Hoppers are robot springs. Because they are springs, if Sonic uses a homing attack on him, he will hit the spring and be sent into the air. But once in the air, Sonic can use his stomp attack to crush the spring and destroy the robot in one shot. Jellyfish. Jellyfish are robots usually seen flying outside of Sonic's attack range. The jellyfish themselves will release 4 rows of drones that will attack Sonic. Some will be green and some will be red. The green ones can be homing attack to get high enough to hit the jellyfish, while the red ones will attack the player. Sniper. Snipers are turret enemies that remain stationary and will attack by shooting at Sonic from long range. As Sonic goes to attack, it will use its little arm thing to try and cover up its weak spot. After a few attacks though, it will open up and Sonic can hit the weak spot to destroy it. Eagle. Eagles are a winged robot that fly around shooting lasers at Sonic to attack. Sonic can parry the lasers back at the eagle in order to stun them. Once they are stunned, Sonic can get on top of their back and ride them. This will allow the player to get to certain locations, but if Sonic doesn't want to ride them, you can simply destroy them with a stomp attack. Balloon. Balloons are very strange balloon-shaped enemies filled with water. They simply float in the air and do not attack at all. However, if Sonic makes contact with a balloon, it will engulf him. To escape, Sonic must do 3 quick stomp attacks before drowning. Wolf. Wolves are canine robots that live in packs of 6. Once one of the wolves sees Sonic, they will all teleport to surround him. Then they will quickly run around, creating a ring that Sonic cannot bypass. As Sonic is trapped, he must then wait for the wolves to attack and then parry them in order to immobilize them. These wolves also come in a stronger gold version. They act exactly the same, but have more health. Following Sonic Frontiers, the next Sonic game is Sonic Superstars. This is yet another game where the enemies don't really have official names, so they kind of just have silly names, like Green Beetle Robot, which just describes exactly what it is. These are enemies that move back and forth and make no effort to attack Sonic at all. Item Mecha. Item Mechas are robots that are a combination of a dragonfly and an item box. When first encountered, they're indistinguishable from a standard item box until the player gets close, at which time they will try and fly away. Once the item mecha flies off screen, the item will be unobtainable. Toad Mecha. Toad Mechas are badnik frogs from Sonic Superstars. To attack, they will attempt to grab the player with their tongues. If Sonic is moving too slowly, they will pull him in and do damage to him. But if the player is moving fast, then the tongue grab will be broken and subsequently destroy the badnik. Electric Discharge Mecha. Electric Discharge Mechas are floating crowd badniks that simply float in the air. To defend themselves, they will stick an electrical rod out from their clouds. The rod will then electrify their bodies, making them immune to attacks and damaging the player. Barrel Thrower. Barrel throwers are seal badniks from Sonic Superstars. They are often found at the top of slopes, throwing a steady, unending stream of barrels down a hill. While the standard barrels they throw can be destroyed by any attack, they will also throw flaming barrels which will damage the player no matter what they do. Unless they jump over them, then they won't hurt them. Coaster Buzzsaw. Coaster Buzzsaws are spiked robot badniks only seen in roller coaster sections. When playing as Sonic, Tails, or Knuckles, there is no way to destroy these, so you must simply avoid them. But if you're playing as Amy, you can use her hammer in order to destroy them. Crawl Shell. Crawl Shells are the 20-second crab badnik. These little guys' shells are bumpers that will knock Sonic back if jumped on or ran into. The only way to destroy the Crawl Shell is to hit their small body and head that are hanging out of their shell. But honestly, they're a pretty small target, so it's easier to just avoid them. Kanga Klanga. Kanga Klangas are Kangaroo badniks. If Sonic comes in contact with the Kanga Klanga, they will not hurt him, but instead kick the player in the opposite direction at top speed. Because they instantly make the player go to top speed, they can be used to the player's advantage. Tails Doll. Tails Dolls are stuffed animals that serve as enemies in Sonic Superstars, though they were first seen in Sonic R, but in that game they weren't really traditional enemies. Weirdly, when Tails Dolls are destroyed in Sonic Superstars, they will disappear rather than explode like normal enemies. Electric Catfish Mecha. Electric Catfish Mecha is a badnik found in water sections of Sonic Superstars. They swim back and forth, stopping only to emit electricity that makes them invulnerable and damage the player. Flythorn 03. Flythorn 03 are underwater versions of the Flythorn. Unlike normal Flythorn enemies, these ones will chase after Sonic and explode if they touch him. Grape Mecha. Grape Mechas are grape badniks that hang from ceilings with a suction cup. They are found in bunches of grapes and will shake to drop the other grapes down to damage the player. Spotted Guarded Eel Mecha. Spotted Guarded Eel Mechas are eel badniks that pop out of the ground, as a vast majority of eels and worms do. They can only be destroyed by hitting them in the head, and they attack by emitting electricity. Watermelon Mecha. Watermelon Mechas are badniks that disguise themselves as watermelons. Once Sonic gets close enough, they will reveal themselves and fire seeds to attack. The seeds will not hurt Sonic, but rather knock him back. Standard attacks will not destroy the Watermelon Mecha, but instead send them flying forward, which will destroy other enemies in the path. They will only be destroyed if afterward they collide with a wall. Water Strider Mecha. Water Strider Mechas are badniks that slide on top of water. They have a couple of attacks. The first is jumping off the water into the air to try and block the path. They will only do this if Sonic is above them. However, if Sonic is below them in the water, they will drop down bombs that sink down. Mole Mecha. Mole Mechas are badniks that burrow underground to attack. These little guys dig into the ground and then jump from the background to try and hit Sonic. Spider Mecha. Spider Mechas are spider badniks that hang from the ceiling waiting for Sonic. As Sonic approaches, they will drop down hanging from their webs, swinging back and forth like a pendulum. Trampling Mecha. Trampling Mechas are vulture badniks that sit in the background waiting for Sonic. As Sonic gets near, they will fly to the foreground and try and slam down on him to hurt him. Elephant Mecha. Elephant Mechas are badniks that are stationary. They sit still and attack by firing fireballs from their trunk. Jellyfish Mecha. Jellyfish Mechas are badnik jellyfish that are found in groups. They simply float up and down with their tentacles falling behind them. If they are moving upward, they can only be hit from above, and if they are moving downward, they can only be hit from below. Tic-Tac Drone. Tic-Tac Drones are robots that look like Eggman. They are found in the background of Press Factory Zone in Sonic Superstars. They will count down slowly, and if they reach 0, they will detonate the level and cause the player to lose a life. Throughout the level, Sonic can step on glowing buttons to restart the countdown. Cooperation Mecha Group. Cooperation Mecha Groups are B badniks found in groups of 3 to 6. These badniks will pass electricity between each other, which will hurt Sonic. Soap Bubble Mecha. Soap Bubble Mechas are seahorse badniks that have a very similar look to the Aquas. Their bubble attack will not damage Sonic, but instead bounce him back. Sonic can also jump on top of the bubbles to get a higher jump than usual, similar to that of a spring. Light Bird Mecha. Light Bird Mechas are owl badniks that fly in front of Sonic. They will let off a bright light that will make it hard for the player to see. Little Terra Mechas. Little Terra Mechas are little pterodactyl robots fly back and forth in the air. Like a lot of flying enemies, they will dive to try and attack Sonic. Spring Mecha. Spring Mechas are badnik tanukis with springs on their belly that will charge at Sonic. As they have springs in their belly, they aren't really harmful, but will rather just knock him back. This enemy is only ever found in Sonic Superstars and only specifically on conveyor belts. Caterpillar Mecha. Caterpillar Mechas are caterpillar badniks that float in the air. Much like other caterpillars, they must be hit in the head in order to be destroyed. They can attack by firing 6 projectiles from their 6 body segments all at once. Dart Mecha. Dart Mechas are swordfish badniks. They are launched like missiles in groups of 3 and get stuck in the wall if they miss. Enemy 10. Enemy 10 is the best named enemy of all time. They are pig badniks that launch themselves at Sonic while he is on fine like grind sections. While Sonic is on these grind sections, he must jump to avoid them. Scarab Beetle Mecha. Scarab Beetle Mechas are badniks that fly back and forth in small areas. After a little bit, they will disappear and be completely gone. In Sonic Superstars, there is a special mission which Sonic flies in the Egg Mobile. The entire segment is a reference to an old Sega game known as Fantasy Zone. While enemies are still badnik, they are based on enemies from that game. They are Botako, Drowlin Floors, Mukolin, Surtham, and Quilly Quilly. Honestly, it was a pain in the butt to find the names of these things. I had to look in the manual for Fantasy Zone. Wall-mounted laser cannon. Wall-mounted laser cannons are enemy robots that are found attached to walls and sit there and fire lasers to attack. There's also a version that floats in the air, but it's pretty much exactly the same. Is the one that floats in the air a different enemy? I don't think so. Pixel Cat. Pixel Cats are exactly what they sound like. Pixelated cat enemies. They are found in the Cyber Station Zone of Sonic Superstars. The last game to introduce brand new enemies to the Sonic franchise is Shadow Generations. And the first new enemy is Black Salvo. Just like all of the other black enemies from before, Black Salvo is a minion of Black Doom. These enemies are found in Doom Surf sections of the game and will fire projectiles to attack Shadow. At the end of these surf sections, the Black Salvo will disappear. However, if Shadow uses Chaos Control, then defeats the Black Salvo, it will open up an alternative path. Black Wall. Black Walls are more minions of Black Doom. They are humanoid creatures with limbs extending out of their backs. They attack by creating walls of energy that they use to attack Shadow. Black Flash. Black Flash are humanoid minions of Black Doom. Their main weapons are their blades on their arms, but their main attack is their ability to create clones of themselves, which they will send to attack Shadow. Black Macho. Black Machos are creatures that have a gargoyle-like look. Honestly, sitting here writing this, I'm not sure how to describe them. They're really weird, and if you want to know what they look like, you have to look, because I cannot describe them. These enemies have the abilities to create cyclones. The cyclones will get in the way of Shadow as he tries to progress through the level. Once Shadow gets near them, they will then fire air blast at him. While working on this video, I also discovered a few enemies that I actually missed on my first go around, and so I don't have to redo every single number in this video, I'm going to add them onto the end here. First we have Foot Kokeko. These are large mechs piloted by cluckers in tube sections of Sonic Lost World. In order to defeat them, Sonic must first get them upside down, which will expose the clucker and make it vulnerable to homing attacks. Toro Coco. Toro Coco is another variation of the clucker that drives the minecart. The minecart has the ability to shoot projectiles at Sonic. This version is seen in grinding sections of Sonic Lost World and can be defeated by a simple homing attack. Surprise Crocodile. Surprise Crocodiles are enemies found in Sonic Lost World, though weirdly they are not listed as robots, but they have an extremely robot-like look. They hide in the mud below grinding wheels and jump out of the mud trying to bite Sonic. They are completely immune to all forms of damage and cannot be attacked. To me, these guys look a lot like the crocodile from the children's game Crocodile Dentist. Seriously, did anyone else have that as a kid? And that's it. That's every Sonic the Hedgehog enemy from the original Sonic the Hedgehog all the way up to Shadow the Hedgehog Generations. If you like this video, make sure to hit like, leave a comment, subscribe, do literally anything you want. Just interact with this video in some way. Thanks to everyone who made it all the way to the end of this video. Have a great day.